Is this thing running?
I know, but I looked at your email you sent. There was one there, really very good.
Okay, Danny, we are ready to go.
All right. If everybody could
Yeah, I
please
just saw it.
stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good morning, everybody. At this time, if there's anyone for the public comment period? No, we'll move on to the agenda. Looking for motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd move the agenda. I take it there's no additions.
No changes
All right, as printed.
All right, move made by Schmidt, looking for a second.
I will second that.
Second by Johnson. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Consent agenda, Andrew.
It's a brief one today, Mr. Chair.
Good.
We have the September 3rd board meeting minutes, Health and Human Services County and Hospital Accounts Payable, and approval of a contract with Metropolitan Mechanical Contractors for the courthouse boiler replacement.
All right, thank you, Andrew.
Mr. Chair, move to approve the consent agenda as brought forward.
All right, move made by Johnson. Looking for a second.
I'll second that.
Second by Bredesen. Any questions on the consent?
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
I just had a question on the broilers. So we didn't go with climate makers, or we could have, or didn't, but they're gonna do part of the work?
They're gonna do the control system because it's a proprietary system, so the only ones who'd be able to install it. But their price for the installation of the boiler itself was higher, so
I
we're
saw
going with
that.
the low cost.
And that was not part of the remodel.
That is not part of the remodel, but it is being covered by insurance because it failed before it was supposed to.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good news.
It's very good news.
Yep.
And we'll talk more about how that impacts the budget down the road.
All right,
Thank you.
all right. Any other questions? All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please signal by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. All right, Excel, you're up.
Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you, Chair. My name is Michelle Schmitz, and I am the new Community Relations Manager for Excel Energy. I manage 75 cities and 11 counties, and Meeker County is included in that. I began in this role almost 5 months ago, and I office out of the St. Cloud Service Center. And I wanted to introduce myself before we begin today so you understand my role. I give you a fact sheet that gives you a little bit about what I do in the organization so that I can be a point person for you moving forward. So now I'd like to introduce Randy Fordyce, our Transmission Public Affairs Manager, and Matt Langen, our Principal Land Rights Agent, who will be providing an update on the Minnesota Energy Connection Project.
All right. I believe you two gentlemen are familiar with the board now? All right,
See everyone again?
yep. That could change real quick. We'll see how that goes.
Thanks again, everyone,
Yep.
for having us. As Michelle noted, I'm Randy Fordyce with Excel Energy here with Matt Langen. We'll walk through a couple of introductory slides just so everyone kind of level set where we are, and then talk about the schedule moving forward, some reply comments and comment deadlines, public hearings, things like that. And then, of course, as always, happy to answer any questions that the board may have. Of course, as you're all familiar with, the Minnesota Energy Connection Project is a double circuit 345 kilovolt transmission line that, if approved, will be approximately 175 to 180 miles, depending on the final route that is selected. It would run between Lyon County, Minnesota, near Garvin, and end at the Sherco substation that'll be retired in the coming years. The 3 units will be retired by 2030. And it'll replace the coal-fired electricity with mostly renewable energy that we expect to be developed in southwest Minnesota. As you're familiar, we filed a route permit application. The state requires that we propose at least 2 route options that we termed the purple and blue routes, both of which could affect Meeker County, and along with several yellow connector routes, giving the commission the ability to kind of mix and match between what they deem would be the least impactful overall route. We filed our application in September of 2023. The state held environmental impact statement scoping meetings as part of their process. And unique to Minnesota, anyone virtually can suggest additional routes to be considered as part of that process. Local landowners, local government units, other stakeholders. It resulted in about 68 route segments, some long, some just, a few hundred yards long, some several miles long, that were accepted and are being studied as part of the environmental impact statement. Those are in pink on the map that you see here. We do expect the draft environmental impact statement to be published in about 3 weeks or so, which will identify anything from, birds, wetlands, wildlife that people would normally think of for the environment, but also impacts to land use, impacts to agriculture operations, proximity to homes. All of those kind of things are studied as a matter of course in projects like this. In Meeker County, the blue and purple route generally follow field lines, section lines. We try to keep them following some sort of existing corridor, and then several route additions, as you can see, are in pink from that EIS scoping process. Of course, these routes are also available in detail. You can really zoom in and see where they're located on our website at mnenergyconnection.com. I'll turn it over to Matt now to talk about what we're terming the modified blue route. It is what we have identified as the least impactful route of all of those suggested, both during the initial application last year and then also including some of the suggestions during that scoping process.
Thank you, Randy, and Mr. Chair, Commissioners, thanks for having us here today. Randy mentioned that in about 3 weeks that draft EIS is going to be published and available for public review. Also next month, towards the end of the month, an administrative law judge will hold public hearings on the proposal, on all the routes that are being studied. So end of October, early November, we'll be here in Litchfield with an administrative law judge asking the public to come out and provide comments. As part of the public hearing process, Xcel Energy as the applicant needs to submit direct testimony ahead of those hearings. And one part of the direct testimony that we provide is our thought on what the least impactful route is that's under consideration. And so we even term it in our direct testimony the preferred route. What we have done is analyze not only what we as Xcel proposed in our application, but all of those route segment alternatives that Randy talked about that came in during the scoping process this last year. And as we've evaluated all of those routes, we have looked for which causes the least amount of impacts from endpoint to endpoint, from Sherco down to Garvin. In our evaluation, we believe that the blue route is the least impactful route of those that we proposed. But then we also have found that some of the route alternative segments that were suggested by the public, by the people who live nearby the proposed routes, are actually less impactful than what we originally proposed. So we have described that route as the modified blue route. So it is our originally proposed blue route plus 6 or maybe it's 7 different route segment alternatives that were proposed on the public. And we do have a few of those in Meeker County. One that was proposed that reduces impacts to home and agriculture, does a better job of following roads. It's a short segment towards the north up there on the map. And then another segment that would avoid an airstrip that's in southern Meeker County called the Lux Airstrip. And so those are 2 examples of route alternatives that we thought do a better job of reducing alternatives along our blue route. Now, what's really important is that even though the company has put forward our thought on what our preferred route and what we would ask the commission to approve, we are far from done in determining where that route is going to go. It is not Xcel Energy's choice where the project goes. It is the Public Utility Commission's choice ultimately. There's quite a bit of process left to go. We need to have the draft EIS come out and then for that to be evaluated and become final. There is going to be, after the public hearings, an administrative law judge report and recommendation. So the ALJ is going to propose a preferred route to the commission. And then ultimately, we are still on schedule to get a decision by mid to late March of 2025. That's when the commission will meet, and they will determine which route is approved between the two project endpoints. Now, one additional thing that I'll say is, much like the scoping meetings that were hosted last January and February, the public and the county itself will have an opportunity to comment at those public hearings when we're in Litchfield with the administrative law judge. But there will be an extended written comment period after those hearings are complete. So should the board or should any of your constituents wish to participate by presenting their comments in writing, they'll have until, is it November 25th? Yeah, there we go. That's right on the screen. November 25th to provide those comments on which route they believe the commission should ultimately approve.
Couple other just quick notes, and then happy to answer any questions. Obviously, if the project is approved and a route permit is issued, we would negotiate directly with landowners to purchase easements. Easement language that's developed is specific to each property and the potential impacts, and it would address issues like matting, crop damages, drain tile, how to work with us to fix those. In a lot of cases, especially with drain tile, we tend to just pay the landowner X amount and say, you guys find someone to fix it. That's what most landowners prefer, is working with someone that they know. What the easement provides is the ability for us to build, operate, and maintain the infrastructure. The landowner retains title ownership to the land itself. There are situations where a landowner doesn't want to live on a property with the transmission line. Minnesota law recognizes this, and landowners can elect to have us buy an entire contiguous parcel if they so choose. And that's done at a standard real estate transaction, often goes through the eminent domain process to determine value. Current landowner outreach, we are asking some landowners and parts of the project to grant us voluntary access so we can do some initial permitting. Gives us kind of a leg up in terms of the design and engineering, doing some cultural and historical review that we have to do on all projects like this. This is voluntary and it will not impact the Public Utilities Commission eventual decision. Just gives us kind of a head start on things, assuming the permit would be approved. We also have been contacting some landowners throughout the several counties in kind of that 60 to 80 mile range west of Sherco. There are a lot of companies doing this as well, identifying landowners who may be interested in leasing their property for solar projects.
Can I
Yep, go ahead,
question,
Steve.
Mr. Chair? Is this, so you want to enter on these properties, but, all right, so are you taking all routes to do
Yes.
preliminary work on? I mean, all,
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, yes.
you don't, right now, you don't have, you ain't picking favorites, you just, are, any route that's considered, you want to do preliminary work on?
Both blue and purple routes,
Okay.
correct.
All right, thank you.
The construction process, that survey and geotechnical work, that's some of the initial work that we're trying to get ahead of the game on a little bit. But after, assuming we do start construction, concrete foundations generally 20 to 40 feet deep, single pole structures with wires on both sides, and then the wire would be installed using a combination of helicopter and ground-based equipment. In terms of the timeline moving forward, everyone's aware we filed the certificate of need and route permit in 2023. The regulatory process has gone on throughout 2024. We expect a decision from the commission in early 2025 when we would start doing that kind of detailed design and engineering and begin purchasing easements from landowners. Construction we would expect to begin in 2026, and the full line would be in service by 2028 with additional equipment installed, including some intermediate substations on east and west portions of the line by 2030. And of course, Minnesota, the website is mnenergyconnection.com. People can review maps, get into real detail on that, additional information. And as always, with questions or comments that people have, our phone and email go both to my desk and Matt's desk, and try to get back to people within about 24 hours or so. Happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Questions.
Go ahead.
You had indicated that the impact, environmental impact study, is that independently done?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Commissioner, yes. So that is prepared by the Department of Commerce, the staff there. So it is not Xcel Energy prepared, it's prepared by the state.
But then you indicated that after it was submitted, it was going to be reviewed for accuracy?
That's correct. So, and when the environmental impact statement comes out in a few weeks, it'll be a draft environmental impact statement. There will be a comment period on that document as well. I believe that actually goes to November 25th. So if the evaluation does not identify a home along a route, it doesn't show up on a map, you can write in and say, hey, count my house on there. Or if it inaccurately states something or overlooks something, the Department of Commerce will be asking for comments from the public on that. And then they will then take those comments and publish a final environmental impact statement that'll be used as the basis for the commission's decision on which route is least impactful.
Okay, then my next question has to do with this administrative law judge, and you maybe want to weigh in on this one. But how is that selected? Based on some type of qualifications, or is it just an appointed? I mean, we would expect that if they're making a decision about something this big, that they would have some background and qualifications.
Yes, sir. So there, this administrative law judge, there are a number of administrative law judges in the Office of Administrative Hearings. So that's an executive branch of government Office of Administrative Hearings. They have a number of administrative law judges, all with experience in, administrative law. And so they get assigned on what I believe is a basis of availability to oversee the case. And then they are tasked with assembling a record, assembling findings of fact, conclusions of law and order, and then issuing a report and recommendation to the commission. Importantly, that is just a recommendation. So when the administrative law judge's recommendation for a route comes out, we often ask people to continue to follow along. Don't assume that that is the route that the commission will ultimately approve. But the commission does ask the ALJ for a recommendation.
Because that was a concern of mine, because who's influencing this judge with information that they're making this decision upon? That was a concern for me. Then the route that you had up there, and I hope you can share those slides with us later, because it's, it was a long ways away, it was hard to see. But that goes right down through Meeker County, I believe on Highway 4.
That's correct, Mr. Commissioner.
So will those erected poles be within the right-of-way of that road, or are they still going to be offset and in the fields?
Very good question, Mr. Commissioner. As proposed right now, they are set outside of the state highway right-of-way. Our intent, and we've had a long-standing relationship with the Minnesota Department of Transportation, where we are able to overlap some of our right-of-way with the road right-of-way, thereby requiring less new right-of-way on the adjacent land parcels. And so typically, I'm going to say that our foundations will be 25 feet offset from the edge of the road right-of-way. That allows Department of Transportation to safely operate and maintain their roadway. So that's been a bit of a rule of thumb, and we'll seek to do that if that were the route that we're approved, or anywhere we're following right-of-way. We're going to ask that road authority for permission to overlap rights-of-way between the transmission line and the road.
My last question.
Yep, go ahead.
I've been to all of your things that you've had, and I walked around with one of the folks that live within my commissioner district, and we've kind of gotten a couple of different answers on this. Vibrant is our internet provider within this county, and a lot of it is through towers and is over the airwaves. I have heard that this can stop transmission. I've heard that it won't be a problem.
Okay.
So I've heard both. And he and I heard both that same night also, and I still don't have a clear-cut answer on that.
Sure. And Mr. Commissioner, I provide an answer on that. If they were able to speak with one of our transmission line engineers, I think what they would have learned is that for areas where it's line of sight, you know, where you're depending on line of sight, if our transmission line interferes with individual's internet service, then it is our responsibility to make sure that that situation is mitigated. And so I will say that typically we have this a little bit more with our wind turbines, where that line of sight can interfere. So what we'll do on a property is perhaps move a satellite dish to an area where it is not interfered with line of sight. But you'll see that in the route permit that gets issued by the state for this, wherever the route goes, that the permittee, us, will be beholden to make sure that there is no interference on individuals' internet service.
So for the record, you will mitigate any interference that will come.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Steve?
You talked about your September sixth modified blue route. Is that top secret information, or are you willing to share that with us, or?
It is.
I don't see any blue on this map, that's why I was kinda curious.
Okay, so
What your guys' proposal, I know you don't have final say, but I wouldn't mind seeing that.
yeah, absolutely, Mr. Commissioner, and I think it was mentioned here, we'd be happy to provide, just email it over a map, even something more drilled into Meeker County than what you see on the slide deck here. I think we have sent this PowerPoint over, so you do have access to it, but we can send an individual map so that you can see it. Mr. Commissioner, it was on September 6th, we did file our preferred route to the docket. So it is public information, not top secret.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just was curious why
And
it's not
we'd
here.
be happy to send over a static PDF map, or we could send over a shapefile if you use Google Earth to show you where that proposal is. By and large, it is the blue route, as has been on the, part of our application last fall. But there are some adjustments, as I mentioned before, so we'll get you a map so you can see where those are.
Okay.
Did you say you sent that map to us, Andrew?
I have the slides and I'll send them out to them.
Thank you.
We'll provide the more detailed map to Andrew as soon as we're done here.
Any else? The modified blue route then, is it more intrusive or less intrusive for Meeker County? From what it was before?
Got it. Okay, so we believe that the modified blue route is less impactful than our original blue route. And the adjustments that we make reduce some impacts to homes, reduce some impacts to agriculture, do a little bit better job following a roadway to the north, and then to the south. During those scoping meetings, we learned of an airstrip that is being used down there. That's, part of the value of having these meetings, right? And so we're recommending a modification around there so that the line would not interfere with the operation of that airstrip.
So you have the two routes pictured right now, and I'm assuming the blue route is the one to the right, is what we're talking about?
That's correct.
And how much difference is that compared to the map that we have now? Are we talking miles away, or are we talking, around farm sites, or is it, how are we talking?
I would say that they're probably on the order of minor tweaks, if you will, not wild divergences from where the blue route was originally proposed, but changes that reduce impacts. We thought they were good suggestions. And I can appreciate it's a little difficult to see the scale there. I mean, the ungrayed out area is all of Meeker County, right? So.
Oh, that is? I was
Yeah,
wondering what that was.
yep, that's all of Meeker County. So.
Better know that one, Mr. Commission.
But I think
Hard to see.
it's a good point that we will get you a map of this that you can see, and certainly if you have follow-up questions, just get in touch with Randy and I. We're happy to answer them.
Okay, because our ultimate goal here is full transparency for all our residents when they're looking at this, so they're not surprised that there's a new, modification. Everybody cares where that line's going. That's the number one thing, and I'm sure some of our counties aren't as open-armed as others, so.
And the blue line on your website is the updated version?
You know, I don't know that that's been updated, and I think we actually talked about that just before the meeting today. I think we need to get a layer on the website that shows the modified blue, so that folks can access that and drill in, yeah.
I think it is important to note that all of the routes on the modified blue route are on the website. Our original blue route and then the pink routes that were suggested during scoping that we or during the EIS scoping period, that we adopted as part of our modified blue route. Everything has been on the website since the pink routes were published in, I believe, May. We also sent the state sent notices to the additional landowners, and then we sent mailings to all landowners on all of the routes, I believe, in early July. So everyone's been notified that, both from last September moving forward, that their parcel could be impacted.
Go ahead.
I know I said last question, but
That's,
in one of your early slides, you spoke about contacting landowners about possible solar. How many acres are you looking for?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, it's tough to say right now. If a project were to come together, they've talked about a 500 megawatt project, which of that size could total around 5,000 acres. Not all contiguous necessarily, but generally speaking, a project of that size would take about 5,000 acres total.
the substation that you were talking about previous times, you must have some sort of modified area that you're looking at in terms of that. Is it in Meeker or not?
Mr. Chair, yes, we do have a location identified. It's along Highway 4. It is in Meeker County for that intermediate, or what we call a voltage support substation.
Okay.
Yes.
Southern 4, Mid-County, or Northern 4?
I'm gonna say that it's the southern half as I'm looking at that map. We can get you on the map that we provide. We'll show the substation siting area that we've identified.
Because that's another thing I think would be real helpful for all county residents is the new modified blue that you have up to date and where that substation is, because I think everybody wants to know where that is too.
Yeah.
And then how many acres would that impact? Is it 40 acres or something?
Yes, sir. We'd be looking to purchase a 40-acre parcel. The footprint itself is less than that.
Right.
But we'd look to purchase that. And then importantly, when we speak about transmission lines, we speak about easements, acquiring easements that are negotiated with landowners. The landowners retain the ownership of the property. However, there's just a transmission line easement on it. For the substation, Xcel Energy seeks to purchase a substation parcel. So we would be a landowner of that 40 acres.
And then when you send out those little pamphlets and stuff that show those routes, are you sending another one out before the next public hearing? So landowners can see exactly how this affects me? And then this is where the substation area is gonna be too? Or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Ahead of the public hearings, is that what you're asking
Yes,
about?
yep.
The state of Minnesota is responsible for providing notice of the meetings. We can ask them to include a map in the mailing.
I think that would be real wise because like I said, it's all about what's in my backyard, period. I mean, I'm sure that's why other counties are not real tickled to death about this. Either are we. And that's why you're here today.
Again,
Last question. That's all right.
this is one that, if you've targeted an area for that substation and you do not have a willing sale, are you still going to acquire land in that area?
So we would have eminent domain rights.
That's what
That is not our aim. We are looking to successfully negotiate a land purchase with a landowner. Yeah.
I know there's a landowner in here from down that Cosmos area, and I just wanna, Brad, does that alternate by Lux's airstrip down there, does that make sense of what you're seeing on the map? I just wanna, as long as you're here, we might as well ask a question.
Well, I can see the first little part of Johnny south to miss them, and then that county road, it would go back over to the county line. The only thing what he's been saying is, part of that does not have road on it. It would make sense to me to put the power line there, but is that a problem with getting to the towers or something then? So I mean, just you know, the court, a mile jog down and then back over to the county line. There's nobody living along that county line until you get, up by David Lux's or, you know, where that powder, otherwise there's like 5 places on this other road where you're closer, very close to that road. Where on the other, county line, there's nobody.
And for those in the room, the area that we're speaking about is really in the southwestern portion of the county. And you can see the pink line running north and south there, right over the Highway 7 symbol. So that's the area that we're speaking about right now. Yep, thank you, exactly. And to answer your question, sir, having a transmission line out into a field and off of the road is not a problem for operating and maintaining the line. We can still access that line and that right-of-way for maintenance purposes, so that won't be a problem. We do want to reduce impacts to that area, so the Lux airstrip is one consideration. There are homes, as you indicate, towards the southern part of that pink route, so we think there could be a jog back that kind of is kind of the best of all worlds there, a jog back to the blue route, but that's something that we're gonna have to work with the state on, and we can certainly show you that area in the southern part of your county too.
Well, there's some flexibility in that.
We hope so, yeah, we hope so. Sir, did that answer the questions that you had?
Pretty much, but I just, he said it looks obvious to go over, but like I say, if you jog down and around for the airstrip, and that alleviates 3 or 4 places over there that would have building sites. Yep. Okay.
So now that you have this modified blue line, are there gonna be any changes that could occur if common sense comes into play? Or is this pretty close to where you're set to hit this line? I mean, I'm assuming the modified blue is the one that you're gonna recommend? Is that what I'm saying?
Yes, sir, that's the one that we're going to recommend. I will say that all of the routes and route segment alternatives that are under consideration are set. So with the lines that we see on the map are the lines that are up for consideration, up for approval by the commission. We're not intending to add any new route alternatives in the process. We're sort of past that part of the stage of the review.
And when you send out this mailer, per se, about the modified blue line, are you saying in that mailer that this is the primary route that we are gonna recommend to the commission? To let the landowners know, like, okay, purple line, you're probably out, just like you did in eastern Meeker. You had 3 lines. Eastern Meeker, you're out. Purple line, you're out. It's gonna be modified blue, so at least those people that are impacted by that can really look into terms to it and be like that gentleman back there and say, okay, common sense says maybe jog it here.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know exactly, is that gonna be part of the process going forward or not?
It's a very good question, and as Randy said, this notice that comes out from the state. I can definitely take that message back to the state and ask if they would intend or would be willing to include a map of what we have a company stated as the least impactful route or the route that we're supporting. I don't know that that's like matter of course what they would do in this notice. Certainly, we would discuss it at the hearings themselves, but I appreciate your point, Mr. Chair, and I can take that back to staff to see if they'd be willing to do that.
The point of the hearings is that if you don't know it's impacted, you're probably not going to the hearing. But if you know that line is coming through your backyard, you're probably gonna be at that hearing. And that, I think, is the transparency that we definitely want in Meeker County. Otherwise, we don't like, at first, the substation was maybe Meeker, maybe Renville, whatever, somewhere in the middle, and now we know it's in Meeker. So things have changed and people are concerned in terms of that because, you know, no one wants a big giant power line in their backyard, period. Neither would you guys, either. I don't care if you're alternative energy or not. No one wants that in their backyard, so.
Very understood, Mr. Chair, and I would just also note one thing that we've, over the years have been criticized for, the process had been criticized for and it changed over the years, was stating a preference for one route and then people on the alternate route stop paying attention. And that's one thing we want to make sure that we do avoid as we go into the public hearings, knowing that any of the route options are up for consideration by the commission. And if there's too much emphasis placed on one route versus another, and then the, other routes are chosen, if those people didn't attend the hearings and didn't participate thinking that it was a done deal, that's what we want to avoid and make sure that everyone understands all of these route options are still under review by the commission, any of which could be chosen.
Understandable. I just want to have in the writing that Excel is recommending the modified blue line, which means probably high percentage chance that that's where it's going. I mean, everybody knows once there's a line in there, you're still, involved, but just knowing that you're narrowing it down, I think is a key piece of information that this is what you're recommending. Not saying this is a route, but if this is your recommended route area, I think that would be very valuable for our county.
And as Matt noted, we can definitely provide that perspective to the state.
Yep.
So we got a administrative law judge, you're looking at October? Later in October, or?
Yes, sir. Last week of October, first week of November are the hearing dates.
Okay.
And we'll notify the county, the notices will come out in early October as to the locations and times for those. But Litchfield is one of those locations.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the administrative law judge will hear anyone who comes to that meeting,
That's
identifies himself and speaks.
That's correct. And for anyone that doesn't feel comfortable, speaking at the meeting, they have the opportunity to write comments into the law judge, and all comments are treated equally. Yeah.
Anything else, ladies? No last question?
I didn't put the precursor on.
I know
mine,
that,
so I just-
exactly.
I left it open.
That's all right. We're all good. They're all good questions, so that's the main thing. Well, with that said, I appreciate y'all coming here. I know it was short notice. I'm glad Andrew could get you on the agenda, but we just want full transparency for our county because like I said, there's a lot of farmers and homeowners that it impacts their land, their livelihood, and we want it heard ahead of time so they can do their due diligence in talking with you.
The map to Andrew today.
All right.
And when we start getting phone calls from landowners asking questions, then it's time that we get an update, and find out. So that's what we're trying to stay ahead of things rather than be reactive.
Absolutely. And anytime things come up, please feel free to reach out to Matt, Michelle, and myself, and if we don't have the information offhand, we'll make sure we get it.
All right.
Commissioner, I live just in Meeker, so I'm not too far from here, so if there's something that you would need, immediately, you'd like me to come in and just sit down and meet. Again, I probably have to defer to my experts here, but just please know that I'm willing to.
Okay.
Could you share with us a phone number and an email address so when folks do ask us for questions, we can reference those? Is it on this sheet or?
It's on the sheet I think underneath my picture.
Yep.
Right here.
Phone number, so that would go straight to you then, Michelle? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Everyone. Thank you.
Thanks. I think so. All right, Public Works Director. Come on.
Morning,
Phil.
Phil Schmalz, Public Works Director. 3 items for your consideration this morning. The first one is we're looking at starting an Adopt a Highway program on our county state aid highways. You've probably seen it on trunk highways and maybe some neighboring counties. The blue and white signs that say this entity adopted this highway. We got a request from a member of the public, so I looked into putting a program together, and I think it's something we could and or should and could do. So we'd expect to offer up to maybe 2-mile segments approximately, depending what folks are looking for. We'll put a map on the website saying what's available, what's occupied. And what we get is some roadside cleanup. What people get is a little bit of publicity for the work they do. And then we'd have a permit in place that outlines the requirements. So we would think 2 roadside cleanups per year for a minimum of 2 years to maintain good standing and to have your sign up. It'll cost us a little bit of money, $100 for the sign panel, and then our labor and posts. And in your packet, I included a draft of what we're putting together for the website. If you have comments on that, let me know. Otherwise, if this, I'll plan to move forward with putting our website together.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
You said up to 2 miles, so they could actually select less.
I think I'd like to keep it around 2 miles, I guess is how I'd say it, but it depends. If we have a 2.4-mile stretch of road between stop signs, let's say, I would try to keep that as one segment, or if it was 1.5 miles. So kind of at our discretion, we'll see what they request, and then we'll work with them to establish the segment based on logic.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I was excited to see this. I think it's a great idea, by the way. So how soon can you get it started? So this will be like nonprofit groups?
Yep,
Rotary
businesses,
or
nonprofits,
businesses.
families. I guess I don't feel like anyone can't apply, whoever's interested in agreeing to what we ask them to do as far as roadside cleanup.
And so our staff is doing it now, I'm assuming, or?
Yeah, I mean, we don't go through and pick up trash. We don't walk the ditches per
No.
se, so there's trash out there. And I know there's entities that do this already. They're just not being recognized for it because we don't have a program in
Good.
place.
Thank
As
you.
far as how quickly it'd be ready to go, I'm hesitant to say this week, but it's possible we could be live next week.
I think you're gonna have a lot of interest. So.
Yeah, I was really surprised when I looked at what some of our neighboring counties were already doing at how much participation they had. I didn't know that it would be that.
Right.
I'm expecting it to be pretty popular right away.
I agree. I appreciate you doing it.
Phil, we drive around and we see these signs already in Meeker County, but they were for the large highways. This is for our smaller,
Yep.
For the
CASA.
facades.
MnDOT has a program, and part of what sparked this is all of the trunk highway segments in Meeker County have been occupied.
Sure.
So now folks are looking for the next tier, which would be our state aids.
Excellent, thank you.
So your plan, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
You're good.
So your plan, basically it's mimicked after the state,
Similar.
it's basic.
Yep, I looked at documents that the state puts out there and then surrounding counties, and it's very similar.
So how will the logistics work of people actually volunteering? I mean, because usually they put up the sign, and it says this is vacant or whatever, and then someone goes on. How will they know that this program is existing so they can participate?
We'll put some information on our website, and I know we're planning on putting out a fall newsletter, so it might be something good to put in our fall newsletter from the county.
Okay,
And then maybe once people start seeing signs, they'll gather interest, and if you hear from folks, send them to our website once that's live. And on there, there'll be instructions as far as who to call, how to sign up, what your obligation is when you do sign up.
So I don't know how often a county person is invited to the popular newsmaker show. However, that would be a great place to get it on too. So,
We do it
because everybody listens to that, don't they?
Absolutely.
as a Lions organization in Darwin, we do a portion of 12. And so I brought this up to, after I saw this, I brought it up to our Lake Association. And I thought, yeah, we're on County Road 9, CASA 9, so, I think
And
that's the type of organizations that are.
Well, that, and also I think some that may involve some youth, Boy Scouts or something like
4-H
that.
clubs?
4-H, I just think it's a
National
wonderful
Honor
thing.
Society, you see all sorts. No, I think it's a good deal.
I'm glad you grabbed a hold of it, I appreciate it.
And just to be clear, I don't plan to narrow it to nonprofits and volunteers.
No.
I mean, if
can be a
businesses wish
business.
to do it, that's volunteer work a business can execute as
Absolutely.
well.
Yeah. I've always thought that was a great idea, so. We've done it for the Highway 15 before too, so, until we ran out of volunteers and I got sick of it, so.
You were the only volunteer left.
Yeah.
Move to approve the establishment of a Meeker County Adopt a Highway program on the CASA roadway system.
Motion made by Paul, looking for a second.
I'll second that.
Second by Julie. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up.
Thank you. Second item is consider approval and final acceptance of SP 047-070-016, which is a Highway Safety Improvement Program pavement marking contract. It's federal dollars, HSIP we call it. We see one every year, every other year, to supplement our routine pavement marking program. Camco out of Dassel did the work, did a good job. Came in a little bit under what we were expecting for cost too. Cost split on this program is 90% federal, and then 10% comes out of our state aid account.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll move for final acceptance and payment of the 2024 seal coat contract. Am I on the wrong one?
This is the HSIP one.
Nope, I
Yeah,
think you're on the
sorry.
wrong one.
I'll move this one then. I'll move to approve final acceptance and payment of SP 047-070-016.
All right, move made by Steve, looking for a second.
I will second that.
Second by Paul. Any further questions? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Now we'll move on to
No,
Beth.
You're queued up and ready.
Third item.
Yeah, you're ready to go, huh?
ready. Want to discuss it first?
I think you should say something
I'm way
about it.
lost.
Everybody let Beth make this motion.
I don't want to know.
I changed my mind.
Our 2024 seal coat program only included 2 roads, some new pavement on our CASA 4 and our CASA 14 from 2023. Again, we chip seal kind of like sunscreen, protecting the pavement from the effects of weather to keep the oil in and keep the weather out and extend the life of the pavement. Work was done good. I recommend final acceptance.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Does McLeod County have any plans to get up to what we did?
On their 12, when I worked there 6 years ago, was flirting with their 5-year plan, but it wasn't on it. I haven't looked to see if it's in, I know it's not in the next couple of years, because they weren't ready when we did 14. But I don't think it's in the near future, because they've been doing some patching work and cleanup out there recently.
I'm just curious, because that's the one question I get asked so much.
Yeah.
And I said, wait, that's not our county. We'll deal with Meeker.
I guess it'd help if Phil knew anybody from McLeod that had
I
any
don't
clout
anymore.
Was on
about it.
that commission, you know.
But we won't
I
get
know
into
one
that.
commissioner maybe a little bit. Mr. Chair, I'm going to move for the final acceptance and payment of the 2024 seal coat.
All right, excellent done. Beth,
I'll second that.
All right.
second by Julie. Any further discussion on seal coating? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thanks, Phil.
No, that was a very seasoned.
That was a very
Seasoned motion just early.
All right.
Everybody's using.
Thank you, Phil. Moving on, Greg.
Morning, Greg Schultz, Land Use Director. Today I've got 3 items for the agenda. The first one will be a landscape project for Rod Engel. Project is located on Lake Erie. What they're planning on doing here is tearing out some wooden steps, replacing with concrete steps, adding 2 43-foot retaining walls, adding some riprap in order to create better access to the lake. Total materials for the project will be about 46 cubic yards. Emily Wolf, area DNR hydrologist, had commented at the time of the meeting on this parcel. Any questions?
Very small amount of impervious on there at 18%, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yep. It's a small lot too, so it's not a very big project. Drive around there is P-rock, granite chips.
Oh boy, it's a long one, but I'll do it.
All right.
Mr. Chair, move to approve application for conditional use permit number 16461. Move more than 10 cubic yards of material within the shore impact zone and 50 cubic yards of material in the shoreland district of the recreational development Lake Erie with conditions.
All right. Long motion made by Paul, looking for a second.
No second.
Second by Beth. Any further discussions on this one? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up. Think it's-
Next project I have is for owner John Rogers. This is another landscaping project on Lake Washington. This one here, property owners are planning on tearing out wooden steps again, this one like the previous one. Placing with concrete steps, adding boulder walls around the steps, and adding riprap, and adding paver patio with a fire pit in order to clean up the shoreline and create a better access to the lake. This one has impervious of about 23% when it'll all be finished, so it's getting up around 25%. Total materials for this project will be about 157 cubic yards of materials. Emily Wolf, area DNR hydrologist, had not yet commented at the time of the meeting on this project.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
this is unrelated to it, but Emily Wolf, is that now the new hydrologist for
Yeah,
this area?
She took over for Ethan, or took over from Emily, the other Emily between Ethan and
Just recently, though.
just recently, in the past 3 months, I think she took over.
So,
Actually, Emily and I believe Ethan went out to this project to look at it, but they didn't comment on it. I just know that from the owner, John Rogers, said there's 2 area DNR people out there looking at the project, but they didn't get a comment with the meeting.
Because we haven't gotten comments, even in the past when we had
Very rare.
that.
Usually only if it's in a bluff.
Yeah.
About it.
Mr. Chairman. I had noticed that too, Greg, that the DNR, they're always notified
Yes.
of these requests, these permitting requests, but they never comment. But then Mr. Rogers stated during his comment period that 2 folks had actually come out.
Yes.
And why would they do that for this project but not the others? Is it because we have a new person?
Could be, maybe Ethan is training Emily, could be, I'm speculating, but, yeah, because they didn't get back to me on what they were doing out there. They didn't say yay or nay, whether they liked the project or not, so. I guess it's maybe just to look it over and say this is what a project of this scope looks like, and
If the DNR comments, it never gets this far.
Yeah. I've never heard the DNR ever comment on Mr. Rogers' neighborhood anyway.
Should be a guess.
No news is good news with the
Yeah.
DNR. I mean, that's just,
Mr. Chair, I
Rule of
so
thumb.
move to approve the application for conditional use permit 1642 to move more than 10 cubic yards of material within the shore impact zone and 50 cubic yards of material in the shoreland district of the recreational development, Lake Washington, with the condition.
All right. Motion made by Julie. Looking for a second.
second.
Second by Beth. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. One more, right?
last item I have is for an IUP renewal for Gregory and Nikki Jans at Aggregate Mining, A1 Preservation District. This is in Swede Grove Township, northwest of Grove City. This is also known as the old Anderson site. Dorothy Anderson first had permitted this site back in 1994. And that 1994 permit expired in 2002. From 2002 to 2008, the site was abandoned. In 2018, Greg Jans had bought the site and reapplied for this permit for this site. Now this permit is expiring now as of this month, or actually on November 6th of 2024. This is a very limited use site, basically just used for local projects in the area. It's about 13.64 acres. He's approximating anywhere from 5,000 to 15,000 cubic yards of material to be mined per year. during this duration period, and it's dependent on the projects in the area. So apparently there's a very small stockpile on the site, and he does have a reclamation plan in place. He has actually, if you go out there and look at it, he's reclaimed a couple acres of this already and turned it into back into farm field, so. That's what is that?
Mr. Chair, am I missing it here? How long is this renewal for?
6 years.
6, okay,
6 years.
all right. Just wanted to make sure.
So this is just a small mine that's used for local projects in the area, and he just renewed it because
Correct.
it was due,
Yep.
not because there's a big project. I mean,
No,
not that it matters.
Just to have access for the local.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve an interim use permit application 16468 to mine, wash, and process aggregate in an A1 agricultural preserve district in part of the southwest quarter or southeast quarter of section 19, township 120, range 32 in Sweet Grove Township with the conditions.
All right. Motion made by Steve, looking for a second.
I'll second that.
Second by Paul. Any further discussion on this one? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thanks, Greg.
That's all I got. Thank you.
Mikkel.
Good morning.
Morning.
Cal Johnson, Human Resources Coordinator, and for today, what I have for you is to approve MetLife as the county's accident, critical illness, and hospital insurance carrier for 2025 to 2028. So currently, Meeker County has this already as a benefit. This is something that employees voluntarily enter into, and they pay 100% of the premium, so the county doesn't contribute to this one. Over the past year, I've heard concerns from employees about our current carrier, which is Cigna. I've heard concerns about the filing a claim process, what that's been like as far as the customer service piece. So I reached out to our broker for the ancillary benefits, which is Integrity Benefits, and they confirmed that they've been hearing this with other counties that have Cigna as well. So I asked that they would go out for proposals, and so they did come back with proposals from Cigna, New York Life, Lincoln Financial, and MetLife. So we reviewed the information together. What they asked was, they asked for companies to give bids with rates as close to our current as possible so that we didn't have a rate change. And then also that the actual, what the plan looked like was as similar to what we currently have right now, what it offers. And so I met with our insurance broker, and then I also met with the health insurance committee, which is comprised of some department heads as well as employees from different departments as well as different unions to make sure that we get input on that as well. And overall, the decision was to recommend to move to MetLife. The reason for that is that the rates are exactly the same as we currently have. It's also because MetLife is one of the largest supplemental insurance companies in the country. So their experience with the claims process is a good process. Our broker says that you're actually having an actual person review your claim, and that the claims process should be a lot better. So because the rates would be exactly the same and that hopefully the customer service experience would be a lot better, we'd be recommending to move to that. And then it would be for 2025 to 2028, we have a rate guarantee.
Miguel, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't MetLife also have a wellness benefit?
Yes.
That little extra
Yep.
piece that the others didn't offer.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
So is this pre-tax? Their deductions, are they pre-tax?
I don't remember right off the top of my head, to be honest.
That's fine. Are they open to anyone, or do you have to carry the medical insurance?
Anyone.
Anyone can do this?
Yep.
There's no age limit on it, or
Nope.
they have to take whoever applies?
Nope.
Was there any dissension on the committee, or this pretty unanimous
Pretty
decision?
unanimous, yeah.
Okay, sounds like it. Okay,
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I move to approve MetLife as the county's accident, critical illness, and hospital care carrier for 2025 through 2028.
okay. Motion made by Julie, looking for a second.
I'll second.
Second by Beth. Any further discussion? Is it always a 4-year policy, or is that just standard, or?
It just depends on what the proposal gets sent, so that's what they sent was
Okay.
that, yeah.
And when an employee leaves, they can carry this with them?
This one they can, I'll have to see what the process looks like with MetLife. What it currently is with Cigna is they have to reach out to Cigna directly, which is different than some of our other benefits that we send out a letter through MedSurity, and then they can do it through MedSurity. So they have to go directly through the carrier. I don't know what that process will look like with MetLife yet, but
And the premiums stay the same?
I believe so. Generally, there's a 2% administrative fee for things, so.
Thank you.
Mikkel, just to follow up on Beth's question, is that fall under the COBRA where they would only have it for 6 months, or can they continue it for a long period of time?
So Cobra's 18 months. I believe that they can do it 18 months for sure, but I don't know exactly what the carrier has for limits. Because it's directly through, so I don't really see that side of things.
Anybody else? All right, we have a motion on the table. All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
All right,
Motion carries. Thanks, Mikkel.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question that isn't on here that just, I meant to, not to. I
Depends
just-
what the question is.
I know. I'm just curious, what percentage of employees that leave here actually, if you know, will meet with you and do an exit interview? Is it 50%, 100, 90, 40, 30?
Well, and so what I do is I offer it either as they can fill it out on their own and then send it to me if they're not comfortable or just don't want to meet. And then I offer that I will meet with them. I would say most people just fill them out and send them back. It's not a large majority. I do mail them, so even if somebody has left and I don't have the opportunity to email them and reach out that way, then I still am following up mailing it as well. And then I also include a return envelope to make it even easier to
So
try
it's
and
easy.
get them back. It's not a large percentage.
I wonder if that's normal. I just think it's useful and not necessarily for negative, but it's great to hear some positive things
Yeah.
like I talked about at the last meeting when we and this other joint powers board were interviewed people and they got, you know. So that's why I was curious, and I don't suppose you can't make them do that, so, okay.
And I think honestly, that's probably the reason is that they're busy, they're moving
Sure.
on, they're getting ready for their next.
That's why I always thought it would be a nice to offer a time between when they leave and when they let you know they're leaving to maybe
Yep.
sit down with you and.
Yeah,
meet.
and I absolutely do that, yep.
So I have to ask this question because CBS Morning the other day, they were showing where people actually hire companies to take care of their leaving of, they negotiate everything for them and wrap it up. You haven't had that by anybody yet, have you?
To hire a company to do
Yeah,
that?
there's
No.
companies that actually do it.
We have Mikkel for that, don't we? And why are you watching CBS Morning? That's the other question.
You're misunderstanding me, Beth. It's the employee who
I
hires
understand.
them.
Oh, the
Oh,
employee.
the employee hire.
Employee hires
well,
it
that
to
puts
take
a
care of
whole nother-
all of their leaving
No,
stuff.
I've not heard
So
of
they can
that.
just move and leave.
That's probably not in a $30 an hour job. That might be like
It's like
an
$200
attorney level job or something.
But
The important people, right?
Important people.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Our severance process is pretty well prescribed in policy. There's really no negotiation that happens with it, so there's,
Get what you
someone's
get.
more than welcome to hire a company to help them with that process, but they're gonna get the same thing that they would if they just came in.
Just wasting their money.
They're wasting
I
their
guess in the big cities, it's quite popular.
It's probably different. Well, they change jobs like you change, you know, so.
And I also just want to note that when we do get exit interviews back and there's things of concern or even things that are really positive, we always make sure we have conversations with department heads and supervisors
And
about that. So
if somebody calls me, I always say to them, did you do an exit interview? You know, a lot of times it's, well, it doesn't do any good, and I wanna say, well, if you don't do it, it doesn't do any good, right? So, there. Thank you, Michael.
Very true. Thanks, Mikal.
It's just like winning the lottery. You gotta buy a ticket.
And not the truth. I stopped, that's how sure I'm not winning.
Oh, I did.
All right,
I'm gonna grab a cup of coffee, so I'm not running away.
for our inaugural department head update.
Yes, so this is the first in a long series
That's
of
why everybody's getting coffee.
department updates that you're gonna see.
What does that say about Brady, that we're gonna?
Gonna be very boring.
I know you're gonna keep the short, sweet, and interesting. No, I'm kidding.
Actually, budget's going up.
Brady's a bit of our guinea pig here, and so we're trying some stuff out. Certainly, as we get through the presentation, if there are things that, as the board, you would like to see more of, less of, let me know, and we can better fine tune these in the future. But this is what Brady, Phil, and I had kind of come up with. So with that, I'll turn it over.
All right.
Braden Pirum, Parks Manager. And I guess our first annual report there, as
Attorneys
far as the
don't wear
department goes.
That cheapest
I
stuff.
thought it'd be helpful, because I'm sure as most people kind of know, you only know usually your local park that you're buying stuff, so I thought we'd go over some of the amenities, not all of them obviously, because we'd be here forever. But different parks, I took photos of different areas like that, so everyone can get a feel for the different areas we have out there. So to start off, just saying, the park board, it was established in 1967, so that's when our first park system started going, everything like that. So it's been around for quite a while. Over the years, it's been developed pretty regularly. The last land that was ever purchased or donated would have been Woodland Park, so that would be the newest park essentially out of the 10-park lineup. And so 406 acres in that, we basically fully maintain, which I call, so the mowing, the trimming, cleaning, all that kind of stuff, 120 acres of that regularly. So that doesn't include the trail system, that's just the maintained areas like that. The rest is gonna be natural or forested or swampland, that kind of stuff. So, start off with, we have 18 shelters throughout the 10 parks. So all are rentable. We have fees attached to that. We'll post for anything that's happening. There's only one park that doesn't have shelters. That would be Woodland Park, because that's more of a rustic hiking park, all that kind of stuff. But the rest have these. So we have some very old shelters and some new shelters. So the newest one we have is 2 years old, and that's actually going to be on the next slide. So that upper right one is on Lake Manuel, and that would be our newest shelter so far. So we do offer, a variety for people out there. It's very popular. Some parks are more popular than others as far as rental goes. West Ripley, Spring Lake, Shaw, those are by far our heaviest used parks aside from Coronis. And then in every park, we also have concrete restrooms. So there are 16 of them, so we have quite a few. Some have multiples. The nice thing about these concrete ones we had switched to over the years, so this was quite a process. It took us quite a few years to do this. We started in the 2000s converting all this, and they double as a storm shelter as well. So as you can tell out in the parks, there's not exactly, you can't shelter under a shelter, it's just a roof essentially. So it's a nice feature both for the public and even staff. We've been caught out in storms before too and have something like that to go into. So while they're expensive, they're virtually maintenance free other than painting, that kind of stuff, sealing. So they've been a very good product, a lot of positive feedback. And then we have playgrounds and play equipment throughout 6 of the parks. So not everyone has them, but we've been modernizing, as you can see up on the left side there. There's one of the newer playgrounds we have. We have them out at Spring Lake, Shaw, Coronis, and then the play equipment would be stuff like swings, riders, spring riders, diggers, all that kind of stuff like that. So those are the little cheaper ones like that. We're looking at continuing to expand the playgrounds. They've been a massive hit for locals. A lot of young families use them, and they've been very nice assets to the park, because it seems like anytime we add one, the usage just increase. And by usage, I mean day usage, so there's a few areas. Swings haven't changed much. These are all fairly older ones. The only difference nowadays is the construction is almost exactly the same. They just have paint on them, so. Recreational activities, we have swimming beaches, we have volleyball courts. I must have somehow moved that right picture over, but that's supposed to be showing horseshoe pits that we have at different areas like that. We have ball fields out there, softball fields, kickball fields.
And then, of course, we have a unique feature, the tower out at Coronas Park. And then we also have a 9-hole disc golf course, which is down in Thompson Park, located in Cosmos. That is actually used regularly and surprisingly in the winter as well. So there's groups that come and put a tournament together, and I always ask them, you know, because they asked to reserve it. I said, trust me, nobody's out there, so go ahead and use it.
I remember when we started this, I got a lot of phone calls about it, and I was wondering how popular it would be.
It's very,
It is.
It's-
Yep.
You know, my grandchildren play it.
Yeah, I would say anytime we're out there, we always see people, and then the locals from the local businesses, they come on their lunch hour.
Really?
They'll throw out there too and do, you know, quick 9, so it's very popular. And that's a nice park, it's 23 acres, so we were able to spread out through the whole thing, a lot of varying terrain, which people like, so. It doesn't take a ton to maintain. The next thing we're gonna have to do is, so if you look on the left picture up there, there's, it's like an image of the hole, like in regular golf. So the ones that are out in the sun are getting really faded, so we're gonna have to replace all those, but otherwise the baskets, the mounds, we maintain all those, so it's been good other than keeping the sections open, but people seem to, the comments we get is they like stuff to be grown in a little more for more of a challenge, I guess, so we kinda accommodate, I guess, where we can on there.
Is there, I mean, cause that is growing in popularity, is there, and it's been around forever, I played it in 1986, when I was in the Air Force.
Yeah, it's
A long time ago already, but I mean,
1986, wow.
He's seasoned, you know what?
and that was in northern Minnesota, but I mean, it's kinda coming back, I know a lot of people. Is there,
Yep.
do we have opportunity on other parks to maybe?
There would be, yeah, because time to time we've had requests, but they've been for parks that are too full, if that makes sense.
Sure, sure.
So we've had requests for out at Cronus Regional Park, but to network it through the park side there, between the tent sites and the volleyball courts and the horseshoe and the ball fields and all that, you'd be intertwining all these people in there, and then you have these random discs flying and stuff, so it's finding the right place. you
Yeah,
know?
sure, I was just wondering if there's.
Yep. But yes, there is interest out there, and in fact, this one down in Thompson, it has actual leagues that come from Hutchinson area and different things like that to come play out there. During their space festival, they actually have a tournament out there for it, and so it is popular and it stays that way. So, and the nice part about this too is the original little volunteer group we had that worked with this along with the Lions Club, they still are active from time to time. Next thing they wanna do is donate some new material for the area where they throw, which is kinda like a ball field aggregate, that lime. So it's nice that they still are interactive after all this
So
time.
the original group that we met with is still active?
Yep, and even the, if you recall, Beth, the gentleman named Shane Cruz, so he volunteered his time to design it for us. And now he's actually designing courses, but he's still, every year he talks to me and
I
asks
know,
what they
when
can
they
do,
called
so.
me, I'd never heard of it. You really picked up the ball on that.
For sure. It's so nice to see how popular this has been, so.
I don't think there are balls involved in this.
Yes, it was seasoned.
Disc.
What, how long, how old is that course?
That course we would have put in, I
Or the
believe,
figures.
2012. Does that sound right? I think that's about it.
So it's
it's been around
10,
for.
12 years already?
Yep.
Nice.
Thompson Park is just plain a nice, large area.
It is a very large area. So that's a 23-acre park right on the lake there, and very heavily wooded with oaks, like where the shelter areas are and everything. The only trouble we are running into right now is we have oak wilt that ran rampant through there. So we've slowly been harvesting those, and you can do it as long as you cut them, dry them, and then we've been selling it as firewood at the campground, so at least
So-
we can repurpose it.
Not to belabor this, but are disc golf courses normally only 9 holes?
Well, we did a double 9, so this has
So
a short
they're
and a
around
long
12.
range. Yep, so you can play either or on there.
But you
So-
call it a 9-hole, but they can do both?
So you can do an 18, but they recommend basically double the acreage for that.
Oh,
So this is a way we made it where you could play that.
cool.
And that also is a park that when traveling on 7, all you see is the brown sign.
Yeah.
Because you cannot see the park.
It's hidden, yeah.
It's hidden off.
Pretty
the road.
cool.
Yeah.
So moving on to our trail system, we actually have 21 miles of trails throughout our park system. And so 6 of them at various locations are paved, and then 15 of those are multi-use natural trails, so more of like the dirt, grass trails, all that kind of stuff. And the multi-use is for hiking, biking, horse riding, and then the winter recreation, all that kind of stuff on there. So a pretty good sized system out there, a lot of variety between the different areas. Darwin, which we see a few pictures here of there, that's very rolling hills and kind of rustic and lowlands and all that. And Woodland Park just reminds me of being way up north. It's a total different environment out there. So a lot of different variety for people. Our two biggest trail systems would be locating at the Darwin-Dassel Park and then Woodland Park, and the rest have trail segments throughout them. And some of the other parks, such as Clear Lake, that have large meadows in them, we've incorporated trail systems through there so people can get out and walk and do some hiking there. And our wildflower areas, we do the same thing, and that's actually something with a local group out there for this Clear Lake Meadow is roughly 10 acres. And we're gonna be looking at basically rehabilitating that and turning into a wildflower field there. And then we'd also put trails back in there, and I anticipate putting kind of a sitting area because there's kind of some neat features inside of there. So some unique items like that, it beautifies the area. And then we are also talking about a section of lake shore, restoring it to that as well. And then it was even brought up to do a basically native aquatic plant, kind of conditioning them in there and seeing if we can start taking that lake back versus all the milfoil and everything that's in there. So that used to be one of the dirtiest lakes, and since the Lake Association has been making quite a few efforts on cleaning up that lake, and I've seen significant changes over the years that I've been here, so hopefully we can get somewhere with that. It's more just showing the various features out there and how different they are. The one with the bridge is actually out at Woodland Park, and there's two man-made ponds on either side of that with no inlet or outlet. And then, of course, most of our parks are on some type of waterway, whether it be a lake or a river. Another item we offer is fishing piers at various parks. So currently we have 3 of them that are the floating style. So at West Ripley Park, Clear Lake, and then Spring Lake Park also has one. And then we have one large roll-in one that goes down to Thompson Park. They are very popular. I mean, some of those, I'm sure if any of you have seen West Ripley or Clear Lake, when the fish are biting, there's basically not a spot available on those things. So they've been a very good asset. The DNR has been pretty good working with us as far as maintaining them goes. So that's been good. It helps when we have an earlier spring like we did this year, so then they're not chomping at the bit to reassemble these, because what we do is we disassemble them and pull them onto shore, because for so many years, the ice would just tear and break them to pieces. So, and now all 3 of these have been replaced, and they're less than 5 years old now, so they're all nice and modernized, and we want to keep them that way if we can. And then some of our parks also have boat landings in them, so any of them that are on a lake have boat landings. So we, along with the DNR, maintain these in unison. We own just about every boat dock on there, so when I come in for a dock purchases, this is typically where they're going, except for Lake Manuela, where we put in those swim docks because of the rip wrapping we did out there. And so some of the challenges we have here is almost every year we have to reset all those concrete planks, because the ice heaves, they just push them up, and then we gotta lay everything back down, and just different issues like that. On this subject, the Coronas Regional Park has had a boat landing that's been basically up for debate for years about our current existing one. It's very steep, it's very hard to use, doesn't have a good lake access. The DNR bought land adjacent to us many years ago now, and it was always on the docket that we'd be building a new landing out there in a joint effort. And so finally, over this past year here, we were contacted by the DNR, and they said they have funds available finally for this project, but they don't want to run the project. So they'd want Meeker County and Stearns County to take control of this. So they're offering potentially $550,000 towards this. And they are working on a design itself with us, so they gave us a 50% build. We looked at it, reviewed, made our comments, and then we actually just had a meeting again saying, okay, let's change this, let's tweak that, and make a good double landing out there. So what is proposed is we would abandon our current landing, make a better access to the lake, and this property of the DNR's it's a much better grade all around like that, so there's less dirt work. We'd put in parking down there, there'd be a nice turnaround, one-way traffic, and then a nice double landing. So our area would be more of a roadway, possibly putting a fishing pier in where the old landing used to be, or just making it a general, parking area there too. So we are getting ground. The next thing we requested from them is basically, what are they looking for a contract? We have to know what's on the line here. I know they said that once it's built, they'd prefer that the county just maintain it, which there wouldn't be a whole lot extra for us to do down there. Throw some garbages in, mow it every now and then, so that part isn't a big deal. What I'm more concerned about is, will they still work with us when it's time to replace the planking, and especially the asphalt parking lot and the curb and gutter out there, because that's the most expensive by far. So, kind of a unique project that's finally coming around, but
How many parking places are they proposing?
there's not a lot yet, because they only have, in that area, there'd be enough, I don't have the plan with me, I think it's 10 down there plus 2 handicap parking. And then they have enough single vehicle bays for 5 vehicles there. So the rest overflow would have to go up into our parking lot that exists right now.
Because we get our AIS fund based on the number of parking stalls within the county. So with the overflow, going through my head, we don't need to decide that or know today, but in my head, does the overflow that would go into the old one, would that count as parking spaces?
I think so.
Additional revenue for our AIS.
Because they incorporated into the plan there, so they show our existing parking lot as part of this plan too. So not only the new section, but our existing section too. So it wasn't left out of the planning there. So in my mind, it should kind of work together there. But we'll see as we go. It's a slow process. We waited months just to see or hear anything from them, so
Would that proposal go through the county board for approval then?
it would have to.
Yeah.
Yep. So right
Do
now,
the
like I
maintenance.
said, we're just in talking stage right now, trying to get a firm thing, because if I bring it to the board here, I want to actually have things in
Yep.
place. So just a heads up, that's kind of what we're working towards
We
here.
appreciate you looking after us. in terms
Well,
of this.
will they let us keep the change if they let us do it? I think we can do it cheaper than $5.50, but.
Do they have a deadline or decisions based on their
I was
funding?
thinking it, you
So,
just said it.
once an official agreement is made, you actually have 6 years to use the fund. There's more time than I thought,
Oh,
but
yeah.
we want to keep the ball rolling, because I think every year that possibly passes by in between there, that funding could easily disappear, so. Yeah, so I'd hate to lose out on, if we can get over $500,000 from them like that, that'd be a shame, so.
Good, thank you.
Oh, that's good.
And then, of course, we offer the campground out at the Coronas Regional Park. There's 43 sites, 3 cabins in there, and for anyone who doesn't know what the cabins look like, they're all the same, so this is a good example of exterior and interior in there. We did add air conditioning some years back and whatnot. The sites are very wooded, very rustic out there. That's actually one of the most comments we get from campers are they like the seclusion that they have out there, so it feels very private to them. Yeah, it's not like, there's a few sites where if you want a group camp, you're exposed to the next camper and all that. But these, if you want just a private site to yourself, you got some nice separation with the woods and everything in there. So we've steadily made improvements over the years, upgraded all the electric out there. That's been wonderful, because in these hot years, we don't have any electric issues anymore. We used to be blowing circuits like crazy and have emergency calls, and so little by little, we've been improving. Obviously, the structures have been going, as you all well know, the new shower facility we put in out there. Woodshed's office, and then that's actually our storm shelter up in the right there that we built back in 2010. And the interesting thing about that is, so we got the specs from FEMA, because there's no official build on a storm shelter. And this was kind of early on when we started building it. And since then, I've had different states and different counties reach out and ask for our plans on this, what we did, because they wanted to model it after, what we had out there and offer to people. And it has been used pretty regularly. So this particular one can fit 150 people in it. The sirens go off, campground managers, they go around and tell the campers, but so many people just stay in their camper, so. It is what it is, but a lot of good
Ride it out.
updates.
Yeah.
And then just few shots just to remind everyone that the Forest City Stockade is part of the park system, though I don't count it in our park count, it is. And so just a few shots of the various things all the volunteers have done over the years out there, and the money the county has provided too with those interest-free loans. It goes to rebuilding the stockade walls or these new structures or the sod house. And again, their repayment has never been late, so they always repay $3,000 a year, it's always on time, so that's always been very good.
Do you do all the mowing out there too?
Well, they have a volunteer that'll mow occasionally in the stockade area itself, but then as far as preparation goes, we come out there and mow and trim everything and do all that, so.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we had a vehicle run off the road and take out our main gate out here and some fencing and different stuff, about a week or so ago. And, they caught the people, so we're working with insurance, getting some quotes and all that kind of stuff, and we'll get that rebuilt. But I know the committee is a little nervous out there because that's the one thing that keeps people from driving in there, so we kinda got things blocked off right now, but.
So this was a point of vandalism?
It was reckless driving is what it was. So they lost control coming, there's a very sharp curve off there.
Yep.
And it was some teenagers messing around and they went flying very fast by the looks of it off there. They ripped highline poles that hold the gate up out of the ground, and I can't believe they weren't hurt.
Wow.
It's quite surprising teenagers would do that.
Yeah, Danny.
We also, in the other areas, we offer natural areas. So some of these photos are from large meadow at Thompson that has the wildflowers. So if you can picture that, that's what we're gonna be doing at Clear Lake. When they initially get planted, there's a much bigger variety of the flowers out there, but over time, you know, dominant ones take over and whatnot. And then the top right is just an example of these little bee sanctuary areas that we've been putting up, kind of little pieces here and there. And it's something that local master gardeners, they reach out to us. One in particular helps us with this one. This is at Ripley, and it's just a nice little pollinator garden, and they're really simple for us to maintain, so we're kind of starting to dot them around different areas like that. People seem to really enjoy them too. When they walk by, they take a look at the little sign there just to see what's going on. So that's been very popular to keep adding these. A lot of people go and stroll through them and just do different things.
Question, Braden. In regard to that, pollinators and such, have you contemplated using more of the areas that you currently mow to be placed into pollinators to not only encourage, you know, the bees, but also to eliminate some of the mowing
Yes, we have, actually.
responsibilities?
Yep, so that was the original thought behind this large several acre one at Thompson Park, is because we had a tremendous amount of mowing out there.
Yeah.
So this was our test one out there, is we took several acres, planted it, and we've done that since to reduce our mowing. And that is our intention in some of those larger unused meadow areas where just nobody is using them. We can easily make more sections of this. It doesn't require a whole lot. We do some weed control, thistle control, that kind of stuff, and in the spring we mow it down again. So yes, we are considering that on the
That
regular
would be
there.
a money saver for the county, not having to do so much mowing, and of course, wonderful for the environment.
Yep.
So thank you.
These are some just natural areas so people can imagine it. That's, left one is actually from the top of the Darwin Hill, which is a man-made hill out there, and you can get quite a view from up there. We have various meadows, ponds, backside of that hill there. Gazebo out at Coronas, that was part of a beautification project, that there was a trust that had been set up many years ago by the Marshall family. And eventually it just wasn't earning any interest. We used to roll it into some type of beautification, flowers, plantings, that kind of stuff. And we had a conversation years ago with the family and asked, what if we liquidated it and made one nice area like that, build a gazebo like they wanted, put a plaque up, all that kind of stuff. And they were all in very favor of that. So that is a result of that. So it's kind of neat that there's still some of that kind of stuff going on, because it doesn't happen very often anymore. So just some natural areas and roadways, Woodland Park, got a lot of ponds, like I said, a lot of water activity. Shaw Park out there along the river. So a lot of scenery for anyone, basically. You can find whatever you want in different parks. Then moving on for this year, well, the trucks weren't really for this year, but we finally got our trucks back in June there. So one was for Coronas, one was for our shop here. And we got another swim dock, so that second swim dock for Lake Manuela. That's what that is. When I had explained it previously at budget meetings, it has a nice stairwell that walks right down in there. And that entire shore has been riprap, so that's why there was a need for that. And we have gotten a ton of good feedback from basically every age group of people that have used these docks. Elderly say it's really nice to get in there. The kids have something to hold on to and all that. We were worried about if people were gonna dive off that and whatnot, which we do have signage up for telling them not to. So far, people have been pretty respectful on everything, so that's been a good thing for us at least. The other thing we did this year, we traded off one of the zero turns, bought another one. And then to be completed, since we're not quite in our wind down time yet, is we got parking lot and road repairs, which I'm gonna be working with the highway department on doing. So again, we have a lot of areas that just need to get built up. And we'll be, over the winter, we'll be building new tables with our commercial frames that we've been ordering, cycling out the old wooden ones and getting these in. And then for Coronas, we're gonna be getting our master plan this fall here, so that'll likely carry on for a while. It's a slow project, but we're gonna get everything started in place, this fall yet here.
Where, Brady, where is Woodland Park? Where is that?
That is in between Kingston and Dassel on Highway 15.
Oh, okay.
That one's another hidden one. When you drive by it on 15, you basically see a small driveway and a parking area and a sign up there. You have to go in it to actually drive through it. And that one, there's an access road that leads all the way back to like a staging area where we have tables and restroom and all that. And then throughout that whole way, it's just branches of trails going everywhere out there.
Okay. What is the size on that one?
That's an 80-acre park.
Okay.
Yeah, so that actually used to be an old gravel pit. So back when they built Highway 15 originally, that was one of the main sections there that they harvested from, and then it sat dormant for many, many years.
Okay.
So
Are Collinwood and Darwin the only two horse trail parks in Meeker County?
Woodland and Darwin are. So Collinwood is actually in Wright County.
Woodland, yeah.
Yep.
Woodland and Darwin.
Yes. Yep. So those are the fully designated. Clear Lake has horse trails as well. It's a lot smaller. There's only a couple miles of trails out there, but there are locals that ride out there as well. So.
So on a little bit of a negative note, how's the dumpster action been?
Misused as always. Actually, out at Manuela there, they took that and threw it in the ditch somewhere, and then when we flipped it back open, it was full of somebody's remodel, so.
What lake are you on, Paul? Is it at Manuel? You remodeled recently, didn't you? Have you investigated?
Yeah,
the
we're gonna
commissioner?
have to, I think.
I'm kidding.
No,
Really?
but it truly is. It's been that way forever. They just get misused, so.
I've been out by Ripley, they do it right in front of you, they aren't embarrassed,
They
they just
do.
get out and start, and I'm like, one day I rolled the window down and looked, and they
Yeah.
wave and go on.
During our county picnic 2 years ago.
That's right, they did that too.
They'll do
They
it right
don't
by our
care.
trucks and everything, yep. They don't, people don't care.
Remember, and we told Andrew, don't do that. He's right.
I don't know what else I'm gonna do with my trash.
Yeah.
Don't worry, it was just old Packer menu.
Yeah.
So yes, unfortunately, all the vandalism, the misuse, all of it, it just never ends.
Is the vandalism been as bad?
This year it hasn't been so bad. It was more graffiti rather than damage this year has been more often than not. So it kind of goes in cycles. Some years people are just kind of wicked mean, I guess, and destroy everything they can. Although I guess I take that back. This past week, Woodland, somebody drove in, rammed all of our signage, so we have a big map out there and everything, and a rules sign, so they were telling us what they thought about our rules. And threw them in the woods, and then broke off some other, posts and signage and stuff like that. So I guess that one was a little more aggressive.
I haven't seen anybody sitting on the roof of the new shelter.
And I hope it
Because
doesn't.
of steel. I think that's got something to do with it.
I think it helps.
All the time when it was shingles.
Yeah.
That was a big deal.
And it's a little higher, a little harder to get up there. And I've also noticed as we've been putting steel on stuff, people used to try to throw a table up on there if they could. One, our new commercial tables, they're way too heavy. You need an awful lot of people to get those moved around. So that's helped, but also I just don't think, they don't get the fun of getting them to stick up there, so.
So, a lot of the signs at the parks have been upgraded and made nice. Do we have many that are left still to be?
I have a supply of the rest of them right now, so we already have them, we just need the time to put them up. So I'm hoping as the mowing winds down, that's gonna be our next thing, is we're gonna keep converting that. So they'll all be similar to, like the one at Manuela was the new design there, so they'll all be similar to that. They've just been kind of enhanced a little bit with each generation of sign, a little bit better each one, so.
Good.
So, yep, as soon as we have time, there'll be more going up. Moving on, some kind of statistics here as far as campground revenue goes. Keep in mind, we are still at a year-to-date for 2024 for us. The money typically will trickle in till halfway through October. Camping is done the end of September. So this number will be increasing. I still anticipate we're gonna be at or above what last year's was. So as you can see, obviously, we were affected in 2020 because we had to close down, for about a month there with the campground before we could reopen. So that's why that one is where it is. And then in 21, it made quite a massive rebound. Same with firewood sales. You can tell people wanted to get out, 75,000 over there. 2022 was just a busy year all around. I think that's when people fully got out, because between camping and shelters and all that, you'll see some pretty big numbers there for that year. And then in 23, we had another increase. Some of these are due to as we've added features to the park and campground, and others are as we've upped the fees to keep in line with, other campgrounds and whatnot.
So is this our share of the revenue, or is this?
This is overall, so take 50% of that, and that would be Meeker's
Okay.
share. So as a whole, always Coronis, I will always present the full number. And then, always ask me if you're wondering if it's half that or whatever that is. And then, so this year, we're still, going steady at 3,659. I still have more to submit and all that. Same with firewood, it's kind of averaging right where it is. I thought it would be down with the wet year, but it really hasn't been. So, I guess as you could see from that one picture of the firewood there, we only have about a third of it left. And usually by the end of the month, this month, we're down to basically just 2 rings of firewood left there, but we have a massive stockpile we made too, so we'll be in all right shape there. So overall, it's been a good year. Shelter rentals and fees, so this one's kind of an interesting one. Again, we were affected in 2020, and so what it is I did the one for the general parks, which means 9 of the parks. And then the other one is Coronis, because we keep that separate. So that's what the red is for general parks, so the 9 parks. As you can see there, 2022 had a big increase, just the same as camping did. And if you look on the bottom chart there for 2022, that's the amount of reservations that had been made. So that's the individuals or groups calling in to make, these large-scale reservations. And that year we had 83 for the general parks and 44 for Coronis alone, so it was very busy. And it kind of, it tapered off, but I would say it's more of an average for 23 and 24 here. As you can see, we're right back up there. And there'll be events going on still for, another month or so. So this will also be increasing as far as revenue goes and just the overall usage out there. So steady use, again, it's a variety of parks that gets used. This year, actually, we had a bigger variety of rentals, I would say, and it was basically every park that has a shelter was rented, and then even Woodland, there was a couple wedding ceremonies out there, so just in the areas. So kind of an interesting scale that we have there, where we kind of have some dips and then some rises and increases on there. Is there questions on anything or anything I can
So your
touch
fire,
on?
would you generate that all just from the cleanup that you're doing?
Generally, yeah. So rarely have we had to actually go out and find it. It's usually from storms, deadfall. A lot of it has been out at Cronus, but now that we have those dying trees, we have a ton of them to take out there, so yeah, that provides us a lot. We basically filled it up for this year to be able to start splitting, enough where I knew we could get through that. Then as we get through that, we'll start hauling more out there. So it's a process, but at least we're not having to buy any and we can use our own stuff. And those campers are getting some high quality wood with oak out there, so.
Is there any, you said oak wilt, does that, did you know anything about it? I mean,
Yeah,
is it-
it's the only way you can truly prevent that. So there's a chemical treatment, but it's insanely expensive. And you gotta bore a bunch of holes into it and dump chemical, and there's only a slight chance it'll work for you. The only foolproof method is you actually have to remove the entire tree and its entire root system. And the problem we have out there is, if you look at where the oak wilt is, it's all in a clump. So we'd have to start tearing basically the entire forest down. But it goes on a cycle, much like Dutch elm disease, where it'll be, prevalent for a while and then it kind of backs off and then it can happen again. That's what we're seeing now, is we have a big section. There was actually about 32 trees that died from it, so we did have a massive die out, but it seems to be contained now, so.
They are kind of in a row too, aren't they?
They are, yep. So it really kind of lends credence to the whole root system intertwining, because it's the closest trees and they just kind of kept going.
What did
So-
you replace them with then?
We'll have to start replanting on there, and that's something Andrew and I have had quite a few conversations on, because one, we also have some parks that are entirely ash trees, and if the emerald ash borer comes through, they'll be wiped out. So what we're doing is a mix of hard and softwoods and doing that, so we're not just stuck with one tree species on there. So we'll be doing the same thing out here. Is once we have everything cleared, we'll put in a variety of trees instead of just one species there, so.
That should make for nice full color.
It should, yep. Well, and especially any of the trees, the maples have held up really well that we have in different areas, and those are so vibrant, so we'll probably start putting some of those in different places. Get the reds and the yellows and all that kind of stuff, so.
Very good. All right, anything else?
You do a great job. I think we have great
Thank you.
parks and activities in the county. When you look around, we certainly at the top of the list, so thank you.
Thank you.
Hard work. You've done great.
Yep. Thanks, Brady. Good presentation.
No other questions?
Unless you want us to make some up.
No, no, you know, there's such a
On
variety.
Danny to make any up.
Paul has one last question.
Oh, I ain't gonna let that go.
No, you're not. All right, appreciate it, Brady. I think
you.
it's a good
Thank
idea.
you.
Yep.
Kind of like this.
Yeah, good, you got to be the first one. Good job.
That actually
Set the bar high, you set the bar high.
gives me a question for you guys. Is there anything you'd like to see for the next one that perhaps I didn't cover, or I know we're gonna be evolving as we go here? Is there anything that you would have liked me to maybe
I think
touch
you
on more?
covered it well.
I like the pictures, actually seeing some of the things that are happening out
Sure.
there. That was very nice.
And then I intend to, as we, you know, moving forward, we don't always have like a building project or something, but as we do that, I'll obviously be incorporating that so you can realize what we've been doing.
One thing you could do for me is not bring up Lake Manuela. the
Go
next
ahead.
meeting.
You're the truth teller.
All right, appreciate it, Brady.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we do a
Thanks.
5-minute break? Sorry.
4-minute break for Beth.
All right.
4 minutes ago.
Still liable.
All right,
I mean,
Oh, my goodness.
all right, next up,
that's,
levy and budget talk. Andrew Letson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a brief overview of the budget, and then we'll discuss the preliminary levy. So, a lot of this information is what you saw at the work session a couple of weeks ago, but for the sake of the public who did not see this on the broadcast, we want to run through a couple of these items. So first off, when we think of the budget, we think of it as, really it's a collection of funds, right? And this is how we account for the revenues and expenses that pay for the operation of our county. So our general revenue fund is funded through a combination of property taxes, state revenue sharing, and fees for services. Our road and bridge fund, which covers our public works department, is funded with property taxes, again, state revenue sharing, and federal grants. Human services, which is our health and human services department, is property taxes, state revenue sharing, and federal grants as well. Parks, which we just had a detailed presentation on how that whole operation works, has fees for service, as was discussed, as well as a transfer from the general revenue fund. Rather than levying directly into this fund, we levy into the general revenue fund and then transfer money into this fund. Our solid waste fund covers the costs associated with our transfer station and solid waste activities. That receives money from fees for service and state grants. The regional library is our contribution to the Pioneer Library System, which we pay for with property tax dollars. We have an opioid settlement fund, which we collect money that comes through the National Opioid National Opioid Settlement Fund. We take in some of that money, and then we use it to pay for opioid mitigation services. Our Family Services Building Fund pays for the maintenance to this building and collects rent from departments and tenants in the building. Our Capital Projects Fund pays for major one-time expenses such as the remodel project, which we have going on, as well as others. We transfer money into there from other funds, and then our debt service fund pays off the annual debt obligations that the county has, and that's funded through property taxes. So the budget process is a long process. We start in May, and then it wraps up in December. So where we're at today is highlighted on the screen, and that's the approval of the preliminary levy and budget. And this comes after an extensive process of department heads putting together departmental budget requests, the budget committee reviewing these. We held the work session back in August where the full county board first got an opportunity to see the budget. And we have now, narrowed that down a little bit further. After today, we will have our truth and taxation hearing in the first week of December with the goal of approving the final budget and levy at the second meeting in December. So as we look at the budget as a whole, for 2025, we have a total revenue of $52,620,153 and total expenses of $52,461,782, which has a net positive balance of $158,371. Typically, we would like to see that budget be balanced. The reason that there's a net positive is because there's a couple of spots where we have restricted revenues that are coming in where that revenue exceeds those expenses. So one of them is our E911 revenue, and the other is out of the, it's escaping me right now, but I can see the number in my head and I just don't remember where exactly it comes from. It'll come to me. Your moment. Yes, seasoned moment. Sorry. So as we look at.
Everybody's on the bus now.
As we look at our expenses across the board, we have a total amount by fund. I'm not going to go through them individually here, but where you see some of the swings is our general revenue fund has about a $500,000 decrease from last year, and the reason for that is last year we still were transferring some money out of that fund into capital projects to pay for the remodel. Our road and bridge fund has an increase in expenses of about $5 million, and that's to account for additional expenses related to road construction costs. Human Services is down $300,000. Again, we were transferring money out of that fund to pay for the remodel project. Solid Waste is up $500,000. We're transferring some money out of there to pay for expenses in our capital projects fund and in our general fund. And the other big swing is in the capital projects fund where it's down about $6 million from last year, and that's because the majority of the remodel expenses are occurring in 2024. We only have about 2.9 million left in 2025.
Andrew?
Yeah.
As long as you, so we're, as far as the remodel project, the 13 million, we're rough, is the 5.9 a total of what we paid, so we're about 50% paid? So
we
some
have-
was in 23 area.
Some was in 23.
Yep.
Bulk of it was in 24. So of the 13 million, about 10 million was budgeted between 23 and 24.
Okay.
And then the remaining 2.9 million is budgeted in 25.
Okay. So there's still some in 24 to pay yet.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Budget.
Absolutely. We will
Yeah.
continue to pay through, yeah.
Okay,
We get
so-
billed on a monthly basis and then.
So
we
the
pay on a
best
monthly
target,
basis.
I'm looking at target, so the best target is there's about 3 million left for 25.
Correct.
Okay, that's the best way to,
Yep.
all right, good enough.
So as we look at how so when we look at the budget, we want to, one of the things we look at is how are the expenses broken down? So 43% of our budget for next year is being spent on personnel services, so this is wages and benefits. 28% is on services and charges, so this is any contractual services that we have. About 4% is on supplies, so this would be your, basic office supplies, gasoline, things like that. And then 25% is on capital outlay. So, big drivers there are the road construction, facility projects not related to the remodel, and then, of course, the remodel as well. As we look at how those expenses relate as a percentage of the budget, one of the things we want to look at is not only what does it look like in 2025, but how does it look like in previous years? And what you see is started in 2023, we had a bigger chunk that goes into capital outlay. The reason for this is twofold. One is this was the first year that we had budgeted some dollars related to the remodel project, but also because this was a point where we changed the way that we looked at the classification of road construction projects. They'd previously been included in our services and charges, and as I looked at it, I said, we should really include this as capital, because it's more of a capital expense. As we look at that expense type of the operating budget, so this is excluding capital, one of the key things that we always take a look at is how does our personnel services compare to that? So as the budget continues to increase, how much of that is being driven by our personnel services percentage-wise? And what we see is that number that percentage is relatively flat over this 10-year period. We had, an increase in 2023, and then as a percentage of the budget, it's gone down a little bit, it remained relatively flat since then. But the difference in spread between, our low point and our high point is about 4%.
But, so is that because we're short on staff?
No,
Does-
this
how does
is,
it-
so
this
as
as
we.
if we were
thi-
fully staffed?
This is as if we are fully
Okay.
staffed, correct. So we always budget to be fully staffed,
But we've saved I'm not saying, but we haven't been, right?
but we
So-
haven't been, so there's the difference between what we budget and our actual.
But this as if we were fully
This
staffed.
is if we are fully staffed, yep.
Okay.
So as we look at the overall budget by fund, this breaks it down by revenues, transfers in, the use of fund balance, our net income. So that net income is where we get to that $52 million. The expenses transfers out in our net expenses and again, and the $158,000 net. And now I remember where that I told you it was coming to me. And it was, we anticipate more opioid dollars coming in than we have expended. So as we look at transferring funds, transferring money between the different funds, this year we have about $1.4 million in transfers. Of that, $413,000 is going to the parks to pay for their operating expense. $68,000 is going to capital projects. From solid waste, we have a total of $450,000 being transferred out of that fund. 300 of that is going to general to pay for expenses in the general fund, and 150,000 is going to the capital projects to pay for facility improvements not related to the remodel. We have $328,000 coming from the Family Services Fund to pay for capital projects that are occurring here at this building, which is primarily air handler replacements and the Debt Services Fund has $175,000 going to capital projects to pay for the majority of the costs related to the resurfacing of the courthouse parking lot. As we look at positions that are included in the budget. We have, essentially now, two new positions that were included in there. One's a human services professional position in their child protection, unit, and the other is a case aide in our income maintenance unit. The human services professional is being paid for through the parent support outreach program. And then the case aide is mostly being paid for with levy dollars, with a portion of it being covered by administrative reimbursement. There was a request for the network and cybersecurity administrator. We're continuing to look at that as a contractual position, and we included less in the budget for that. And then there was also a request for another case aide for the waivers and adult mental health services, and that was recommended to be deferred by our personnel committee.
I have to ask this question because when that presentation, that case aid, 66,000 is gonna be paid for by levy dollars?
No, this is the total cost.
Total cost.
Yes, so 70% of that would be covered by levy dollars.
Okay, because I thought that we had pushed that because it was,
There were two case aides. One of them we pushed, the other we did not.
right,
Yes.
Did you think it was fully funded?
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pay attention.
Do you remember it that way too, Julie?
I thought that there was more money available to help with covering those costs.
I would, hold on, per our conversations both through HHS and public safety at AMC last week, I would say there's definitely a push for more dollars for both youth and adult mental health. So I mean, statewide, and that's a big mental health, and I'm sure Andrew, you guys have heard the same conversation, so I wouldn't doubt there's more dollars available
Well, and I.
moving forward, and
Now I'm wondering, was that an anticipated that there was gonna be more, and that's how it was too, so.
So, looking back at my, my notes, there was not a discussion about additional funding going towards this position. But what we had talked about was that we're adding this position in lieu of an additional, income maintenance worker. And this unit hasn't seen, a new position in 7 years. But we know that we're having turnover in this unit with some retirements, and this would help continue to prepare us for the future, so.
You have refreshed, that, I do remember that part about the, yeah.
Steve, you had sent us an email from AMC, and I think I asked you this question when we visited yesterday, Andrew, and I was hoping that you might have some information for us. In your email, it mentioned that there may be some AMC different funds available to help cover, like these two positions that we were addressing, one with Health and Human Services and the other one with Public Health.
I mean, the clarification and what I sent you was basically just the platform and policy, that's, just
their
like this, the
asks are.
preliminary
Priorities.
guesstimate of what's coming in December to ratify at these committees, just general information. So nothing etched in stone. AMC will not send us a check for anything, but they will lobby to get more of them dollars legislatively. So that's what them platform or them pieces, these are the early targets. And as it said in that email, you'll talk about, you can address any of them you wish.
DHHS, I assumed that was Public Health and Human Services.
DHS, yeah.
Funds available, maybe?
But you'll be able to comment on them at the district meetings in October, and again, then we'll bring them up at the annual meeting in December. I just wanted to get that general information out to everybody on the board.
But it fell right into what we would be discussing today with these two additional.
But them are all just platforms that they
That they
will
try to lobby
support
for, that
to the
doesn't mean-
legislatively, but the dollars,
Not hand up one they even support.
The dollars haven't been directed there
no,
yet.
no, that's
Okay.
next legislative, we're looking ahead to 25.
And I do apologize, because it was how many months ago that we had this discussion?
It was in June.
June, so, yeah, and now you're working off.
It's
why I
only,
take
it's
notes.
only September.
Yeah. First part is.
Mr. Chair, I have a question, and I always wonder about this, so I'll just ask.
Yeah.
I guess it's for you.
Sure.
So we get these positions and I always hear they're fully funded, they're fully funded. Do we track when they're no longer fully funded and what happens to them, or does that never happen?
Yeah, one of the things that HHS works on regularly is ensuring that the revenues that they're bringing in are sufficient to cover the costs that are there. So, you know, they've worked really hard on understanding, trying to figure out, because DHS doesn't tell us, how the formulas work so that we can try and maximize some of that funding. You know, there was an example that we got this year where, I don't remember exactly the funding source, but it was related to mental health. Our per hour rate increased really significantly because of the way that we were doing that work to try and bill for it. We know that from time to time, you know, programs may change or may disappear, and with that, the funding sources may change or may disappear. And with that, we use, you know, we evaluate, is there continue to be a need for this specific position? Should we reallocate it to somewhere else where there is need and funding, or when we have attrition, do we not fill that position?
So in the time here, I don't recall that ever happening, but
So-
I was just curious.
So
That maybe it
one,
is.
one really good example that I've heard about regularly since I've been here was, you know, we had a position that was grant funded that supported LARP, that when that grant ended, that position ended as well.
That may have been before me, or not.
No, that was,
During you.
So one time that's happened. Because it's always what they say, and I get it.
Yep.
But this isn't just my fear here. I hear it on every board I'm on. We're gonna take this grant, we're gonna hire an employee for
was it part of that?
$150,000.
Yeah.
Then the political winds change, and then that money isn't there. So,
Sure.
I'm just saying, it's nice to be aware of
and,
these things.
and certainly if the money isn't there and our requirement to provide the services isn't there, if the work isn't there, then we don't have a need for the positions. And I'm not suggesting that we would immediately look to do layoffs, but we would look to right size and make sure that we have the right number of folks performing the services.
I guess
Our
I-
goal is we don't want to have people sitting around doing nothing.
Well, obviously, and I guess I don't see any time in social service where the work has gone down since the numbers have gone up, so.
Yeah. And,
Such
and
a
we will,
successful program.
And just, if I may clarify something about my memory, just being.
Don't bring up what I think you're gonna bring up, because I'll never talk to you again. That was off camera. Let's
Seasoned
keep
as
it
in
there.
summer to fall.
Yeah. We aren't gonna talk about how
So-
many times
Getting
someone
an
was
attorney.
a chair.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
moving on, so we, again, anticipate using fund balance this year, with $4.4 million. Of that $4.4 million, $2.9 million is, from the capital projects fund to pay for the balance of the remodel project. $442,000 comes from the general fund. Of that, $78,000 is restricted for AIS. The remaining $363,000 goes towards, you know, other things. We have $105,000 from the road and bridge fund to pay for a portion of a plow truck. $155,000 out of the human services fund to cover operating costs, but that number has come down over the past few years as we've kind of dialed in some of the billing that they've been working on. Solid waste fund, we anticipate using a portion, $229,000, to go towards some capital projects, but also some expenses in the general fund. Family Services Building Fund, $235,000. Fund balance goes to pay for some improvements at this building. And then $359,000 is debt service. Of that $359,000, $175,000 is for the courthouse parking lot. And then the balance pays for the second to last set of installments of the 2021 refunding bond. So that's how you get to the $4.4 million. As we look at some of our budget highlights, big things that are out there, we have 2 plow truck replacements, patch wagon replacement in the highway department, our Cronus Park utility vehicle replacement, replacing 7 squads, of which 3 of them are being paid for with fund balance because they're ones that have been deferred since 2020 when we have slowly been catching up on the ones we weren't able to purchase. $16,000 for security information event management software. $58,000 for our Office 365 transition as the Office 2019 package that we have is out of support and maintenance. We need to transition to Office 365. just shy of 10 grand for some jail bed upgrades. As I mentioned before, the air handler replacements here at this building. Exterior door replacements down at the north end and the south end on the Holcomb side, replacing those, which are in pretty poor condition. The courthouse and LAC parking lot resurfacing I've talked about. We have to replace the uninterruptible power supply at the courthouse. And Brady had mentioned earlier today the shelters that we have at many of the parks. The one at West Ripley is in need of a new roof. And then we have the road construction, $7.3 million, and as I mentioned before, remodel project completion at 2.9. One thing I don't have on here that is in the budget today, in the preliminary budget that you have in front of you, is the boiler replacement that you approved today. When we were going through the budget process, we anticipated two things. One, that the cost of the boiler was going to be closer to $220,000, and as you saw today, it was closer to $55,000, which is great news. And then the second was that we were going to be on the hook for the whole cost. And as we talked about today, MCIT is going to cover everything except for the $1,000 deductible. So what that does for us is, as we look at we were paying for those improvements out of fund balance, out of a couple of different locations. That $120,000 was coming out of this $363,000 in the general fund. So what we're gonna do is reduce that use of fund balance by $120,000, which you will see reflected in the final budget. So
By what percent?
by what percent?
We're currently at three
It does not impact the levy because all of those projects were already being paid. So you have two options, like, I want to give you some options. Your options are that you can reduce the amount of fund balance that we are using, or you could take that money, that savings, continue to use the same amount of fund balance and reduce the levy, or a combination of the two. My recommendation would be that you reduce the amount of fund balance that we're using, because as we get down the road, we know that we have some expenses that we are gonna have to continue to cover. We are still using a fair amount of fund balance to balance the budget, and by reducing the levy today is gonna cause us to have to do a larger levy increase down the road to get off of that use of fund balance, which is why I would recommend we do
So
that.
when this is all said and done, we'll have how much in fund balance?
So, are you talking about how much left in fund balance?
How much we'll have left?
Yeah, I don't have that number right in front of me today. What I can say
no
is,
idea.
what I can say is when we looked at the draft budget at our work session, we were looking at being, if assuming every dollar goes out, every dollar comes in as we've budgeted, we'd be at about 44% of revenue, which is where we had actually planned to be at the end of 2024. By adjusting this, we're gonna be north of that, so.
I think we've always, yeah, that's fine. But I would agree that we shouldn't use it to reduce the levy.
There's a window of percent that needs to be in
Between
there.
35 and 50%.
Yeah, thank you.
So, the last piece of it is our preliminary levy. So as we talked about at the work session, we're looking at a 3.5% levy increase, which brings our total share to $17,415,860. And with that, I would be looking for a motion to adopt the preliminary levy. One thing I would like to note is that in the recommended motion, it does say the preliminary 2024 net levy. My find and replace missed that one. So, it should be 2025.
Mr. Chair,
Who missed that one?
I will,
It will own that.
I will move the set the preliminary 2025 net levy at $17,415,859, which represents a 3.5% increase over 2024.
Okay, motion made by Steve, looking for a second.
I'll second that.
Second by Julie. Any further discussion?
I first of all would like to thank the Budget Committee and all of the department heads. I think that after being at AMC last week and hearing some really fantastic levy amounts, I think you guys have done a great job, and thank you for that, because I don't know what you guys heard. I heard a couple of double digits there, but I heard a lot of 8, 9% levy increases for some of the county.
At MRC, it was preliminary, and we went around the room, so 42 counties. And the only county lower than us was Stevens County.
Really?
A lot of that 5 to 9, I would say, covered the bulk. A lot of 7s, a lot of 6, 7s.
Mr. Chair, I was just gonna say the same thing. I was at a CJMTS meeting, board meeting, last Friday, and they went around the room, and we were low, and they were like, how did you do that? And there's people at 7, 8, 9, 10, and using their reserves, so.
Their
So I
funds,
appreciate
yeah.
you guys' work on it as well as the department heads and Andrew. We never like any of it, but at least if we can keep it so we're not here and there and here and there, constituents kind of know what to expect. And we've done a remodel, so,
Yep.
that's
And
pretty
Andrew
exciting.
shared
Yep.
where we have been the last 4 years. I believe you shared a chart with us.
We've
And
been
we're,
pretty, I think 1 year we're under.
Well, I think when you look at the state spending that
Yeah, really.
that flows through our main street at some point in time, and when you're 8, 9, 10% inflation, you know, in state spending, it's harder to hold a 3.5.
Absolutely,
to
and
get
it's harder
down there.
for people right now anyway, so I appreciate what you've done here.
But the department heads came, I thought, with really respectable numbers is the way I'll analyze it, I guess, in preliminary. So it made our job a little easier too, so good, I mean, it was good work by.
Admittedly, it also made it tough then, when we were trying to.
Yeah,
get things
absolutely.
to balance.
Yeah, yep,
It's hard when you look at it and you say, all of this is very reasonable,
Yeah.
so.
yeah.
But, yep, I agree. Big kudos to Andrew and his staff and all the department heads, because they're just trying to reflect their budget based on what we're trying to do in the county, so. It made it a lot more smoother. So we have a motion on the floor and second. Any further discussion on the prelim? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Good work. Administrators report.
Yeah, I have just a couple of things for you. Since we are on the topic of the budget, one of the things that I emailed out to everyone yesterday was the increase in the dues from AMC. And included in that was a list of accomplishments and things that AMC has done that benefit us. And Julie, when we talked yesterday, we had a longer discussion about that, and I thought was very good. One of the things I wanted to point out that was listed in there, but really has kind of a direct impact, is if you were to look back at that, the RBA for the preliminary levy and budget, and on that sheet that shows the levy comparisons, if you look at that county program aid line from 2021, when we were at $1.175 million, compared to 2025 at $1.642 million, that is one of the things that has saved our ability to manage a lower levy increase. The way that the formula worked this year, we saw a $150,000 increase in our county program aid. Other counties saw deductions. Why that is, they don't give me those numbers to tell you exactly, but it is one of the areas where we are fortunate, and frankly is a direct result of the work that AMC does down at the Capitol. And Steve and Paul, you both can talk more directly about that for what you see at those conferences. So, just wanted to mention that.
I think another point, I know a heavy piece that AMC and actually Julie Ring did, executive director, was on the opioid settlement. The whole country didn't come out as good as Minnesota did on that. And she was really a bulldog in that fight. I mean, she stayed in that one start to finish, so.
Absolutely.
So we did very well there too, so.
Also, just wanted to note that we are going to have a work session next week. We have 2 items. One is going to be an update on our GAPS court process, which is a kind of a new and unique thing that we are doing that many other counties aren't. We had some of our folks went and did a presentation recently on that, and I've asked them to come and share that same information with you. So
GAPS, is
Yep.
that an acronym, stands for?
it is, I don't know exactly what it stands for, but the intent is and they'll talk more about this next week, but there are individuals who are deemed mentally incompetent to stand trial, and then they fall in kind of the cracks of, they're not able to get services to get to the point where they're there. So this is helping work people through those processes. So
It's not an acronym, it's just
Pardon
title
me?
that we chose. It's not an acronym, it's just a title we chose.
I assume everything's an acronym.
No, it's because we used to just discuss it in general, that there was a gap in between the ability to restore someone to competency and when they are needing to go back into court. And so we called it the gap. And so it's gaps court, where we're trying to address where that gap really is, where we can't hold them accountable through criminal, we haven't restored them to capacity, so what can we do with them since the hospitals are too full? You can't just put them in a hospital and expect that they'll be restored. So there's requirements now that the legislature has kind of helped foster, but we were sitting there literally in a black hole. The whole state of Minnesota was in this black hole for a few years, and we called that the gap. The failure to actually address the issues of these individuals.
So you don't wanna call it the black hole. so you
Correct.
Came up with the gap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Black hole.
Gap is maybe better. Okay,
So
thank you.
we'll all have an opportunity to learn more about that next week. And then the other thing is we'll have a discussion about our Humane Society contract. So
You just have to give them more money, that's all. They don't have enough, that's.
Contract is good for how many?
We'll have a nice,
I know what-
robust discussion on that one.
I know that you'll listen to the seasoned veteran.
You know.
We're gonna start over and we'll have a 2-year contract.
2 years, okay.
This
Leave it
last
at
one was
robust
10 or
and
12
discussion.
So, and then lastly, for everyone who's still listening, today is National Voter Registration Day, so it's a good opportunity to get out there and register to vote. And make sure you tell your neighbors and your friends. And absentee ballots are starting to be available this Friday, so the end is near as far as
Is
this
the
election.
ballot established? Like, we know for sure who's running for
Yes.
president
Yeah.
and who's not on there? Okay, just.
Friday
No,
is,
Friday.
They,
I was just being silly.
Barb told me as we were walking in today that ours are being printed as we speak, so
Well, hopefully nothing
they
changes.
better be right.
Friday's the day.
Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Okay. Board of Commissioner Committee updates. Want to do a quick brief one on that, everybody?
Danny's got things to do.
Yeah, I got a few things.
Okay, I'll make it brief. I had a personnel meeting for Supporting Hands. We just updated some personnel policies. We went at 4% for increases. We wrote some paid time off, how people can now gather that with a check, stuff like that. I had a CMJTS meeting. That was pretty much all good news. The audit is going well. We're getting our funding back. They're gonna be, I'll get into the rest, I know you're in a hurry, so, they're gonna be visiting in Litchfield. I believe they're gonna have a bus and go around each place. So I think they're gonna be in Litchfield on the 21st of October. I'll let everybody know, and they're certainly visiting their office here. And they would like to have some commissioners stop in if you'd like to. And I had a phone call from a citizen that used our EMT, Mike, I believe his name is. Is that his name?
Okay.
yes,
Mike Muller.
Mike, who raved about what a wonderful job he did. And I just wanted to pass that on. She said it really made the situation a lot easier, so it's good to hear those things. That's all I got.
All right, thanks, Beth. Julie?
Ready? Okay. On September 3rd, our last meeting, I wasn't present to report my committee activities during the regular meeting because I had been called in for jury duty. I arrived late, so I'm sorry about that. So I'll share just a little bit of our CHS 3 County Public Health meeting, which had taken place then on August 29th. That was down in Glencoe. We met Brett. He's a new employee. We heard about his initial successes in his new position, some of his responsibilities. The CHS is fully staffed at this point. They're working on accreditation requirements now during the month of September. Kaisa is planning to come before this board to give us a report, and I think she'd like to be on the one of the October agendas. I don't know if she's visited with you yet, Andrew. We'll see. The local public health is working on filling a public health nurse, and a health educator position. Those two positions are recently closed, I believe, and moving now into the next phase of hiring. Then, on Tuesday, the 10th, we had the county picnic. It was wonderful, and I believe Beth gave us the suggestion of trying it as a noon picnic. It was a lovely day.
Finally, I had a good idea.
You bet. It was very, and we had a
Cheers.
great turnout. What did we say, Andrew? Some over 100
About 100
employees were able to come. So thank you to all the employees who came to the park for lunch. I enjoyed visiting with many of them. It was fun to work alongside my colleagues as we served our county workers. So that was very good. And I had the tasty pleasure of judging the dessert contest, and it was a delicious challenge. So then, Wednesday, the 11th, we had the Aquatic Invasive Species meeting. This committee is in need of a new member. If any of you know someone with a passion for our area lakes, please encourage them to apply or give Paul or myself a call, or they can contact any of the current members of the AIS committee. AIS has $306,000 in their fund. They're conducting a survey now for 2025 to determine meeting dates, time, and location, because that's going to need to change. The AIS committee is trying to create a more simplified template for Lake Association folks to assist them as they try to complete these applications, develop a lake management plan. And then we took a look at the grant timelines and approvals at the end of the year report. And here we are today. This afternoon now, Danny and I have a 1:30 U of M extension meeting up at the fairgrounds. And that is my report.
I think Danny's pouring cement.
All right, thank you, Julie. Move on to Paul.
Okay, we'll start out. We had a Prime West meeting, and for the first 3.5 years, I never heard us mention a caution word because we had plenty of money. And for the first time, in
Forgot about
finance,
that.
they're saying, we're just gonna lay low and squirrel away. Because, one of the things, if we prevail in the lawsuit, currently, our required amount of money that we have to have on hand to cover things, we are at 800% of what we need to have. We're small, but if we prevail in the lawsuit, then we're gonna grow bigger. So that number actually goes down because we'll have more people on the plan. So, Jim is advising squirreling away. And,
Sit back and watch.
sit back and watch. And it's hard to disagree with anything Jim says because he is just so sharp on this stuff and so way ahead of it. Then I had a PAC meeting in Wilmer last Wednesday. Kind of a good news there. They received from the Children's Mental Health Initiative a grant which helps our folks who are in the journey to independence. They are going to be getting $640,000 annually for the next 4 years. So that's a significant amount of money for that
How many
particular.
employees are they gonna hire? You haven't heard yet?
And then on a second grant, we received $225,000 for the first year, and then we'll get $180,000 for the next 2 years after that. So that's gonna head up 2 projects. And of course, everything is always in acronyms, and I'm not even gonna attempt to tell you what that program is on the second one because it's too long. So, then went on up to Alex, to the AMC meeting, and I'll briefly on that. We had, a presentation once again on voters in our auditor presentation. I don't think we really got anything new there. Did you guys?
No.
It was just kind of refreshing everybody about all the things that the auditors have to go through to make sure that they are compliant at the end of an election. But then we, as Steve indicated earlier, we set priorities, and I'm on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. And we took kind of a different road. Normally you set 5 priorities that you push forward so we can vote on at the fall district meetings. One of our folks there got up and said, we need to start thinking about things globally. And he said, in the next room over in Health and Human Services, they got some big ticket items. They got some things that are important, not to downplay our importance. But we basically selected one priority, and that was bonding for our roads and construction like that, and left 4 off, basically. We have 2 there, but we don't, one is greenhouse gas, which, you know, I mean, they're working on that anyway. We don't need to make it a priority. But I thought that was really good on the committee's part to say, no, things that are going on in public safety, things that are going on in health and human services, are as important as our roads. So let's focus on the bonding for our roads, and that's it. And so that's kind of what we did coming out of there, which was, I thought, really nice.
So I'm on HHS, and they've had the same priorities for, well, they've maybe added one, but, you know, it's mental health, it's IT with DHS, it's the same things they've been trying to do for a few years, so that was a good idea, maybe. We'll see.
Well, and then the first, I'm saying this only because it's gone on all 3.5 years I've been a commissioner. We had to talk about broadband.
Yeah.
And I sit in
That's
that
another
room
one.
and hear about broadband, and all I can think about is Vibrant, thank you so much, and Meeker Cooperative Power, thank you so much for us not having to really deal with that in the big picture. So, that's a wrap.
All right, basically, locally, we've had, me and Danny been in the union negotiations, and we've got some we still have one group we have to meet with yet. First initially, correct? And then, but we're progressing well on a couple other ones. We feel pretty good about that. And I think we hope they are feeling good about it as well. Then I'll move into AMC and MRC. MRC, their dues are gonna go up as well, but the good news about that is they have 12 new counties, so we're up to 42, and they expect to be at 44 counties. So the dues they've already collected will more than cover the increase in the budget. So we, as a Meeker, should not see any increase in that. Senator Tory Westrom was in the MRC meeting, talked about broadband. One of the things they have a problem with, or they're looking at, is, and I without getting too far into the weeds, he said there's unilateral support or bipartisan support for broadband when we talk building the road, like when he said, we ain't buying you a car, and there's some proposals to buy devices now for people. And he said, they're not gonna support that, so. That was the biggest things at MRC. AMC in public safety and mental health was our number one on our one of the number one things, and I can, a lot of the continuum of care kind of brings back to Brant when we had a meeting 6 months ago with the judge and Brandy and the sheriff and Paul and corrections and DOC in the room, and there's gonna be, other counties they're starting to make that type of meetings more of a requirement or a part of our platform to get more of the players in one room. So I think we're already ahead of ourselves a little bit with that 6 months ago, so that was good news. Armor funding continues to be a big problem. I know the sheriff has talked about, armor radios that we're buying now, whenever they force us to make the switch, will not be, compatible. So we're gonna have, that's literally the $250 million question is when that's gonna roll out and how that's gonna impact us, but it'd be a massive amount of dollars per county. So that's a high priority. And then fully funding the community supervision formula, there's a big increase. A few years ago, there's 3 funding formulas, Meeker's DOC, and there's also county probation counties and community correction of that counties. And there was a little rumble in the waters that DOC is gonna go back to the legislature and try and get more funding for just their part of the formula. And that was not sitting very well, so Commissioner Paul Schnell was in our meeting. And like I stated in that meeting, usually when he leaves, there's more questions than what got answered. And that seemed to be true again, so we'll keep an eye on that one. Other than that, yeah, there'll be, district meetings will be coming up, and I have Minnesota Development Corp tomorrow night, or, yes, Wednesday night in Bolivia.
All right, thanks, Steve. Like Steve said, we had a couple negotiations last week. We have some more coming up this coming week, correct?
Next week.
Our EDA meeting was canceled, and we have extension today, so with that,
Are you still short an EDA member from?
yeah,
From Groves.
I think,
I think we're
We
covered.
were looking for the Cosmos area, and I.
Yes,
reached out to-
Cosmos, it was
yes,
Cosmos,
there we
yeah.
are.
Yep,
Yeah, we filled Grove City.
yep, yep, Cosmos is still open. And with that said, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.